Chapter 461. Those who could survive in this mine for a long time either had extremely strong bodies that could resist the corrosion of the baleful aura, or they could use the baleful aura to cultivate. Regardless of the type, they definitely weren't weak. Wang Daoyuan's metal attribute spiritual energy already contained some baleful aura, so it wouldn't be a problem for him to absorb some more. Baleful aura was derived from metal attribute spiritual energy and yin energy. His fire attribute spiritual energy also contained pure yang energy, so he wasn't afraid of baleful aura. Even if he absorbed a bit more baleful aura, he could still consume it. After entering the mine, he didn't walk very far before he encountered two forks in the road. There was no difference in the concentration of baleful aura between the two forks. He chose the left one. After walking for less than half a kilometer, he encountered another 3 forks in the road. He continued to take the left one. More and more forks appeared, appearing less and less regularly. It was hard to say when a fork would suddenly appear. The deeper he went, the thicker the baleful aura became. Wang Daoyuan had already gone dozens of kilometers into the mine. He couldn't remember how many forks he had taken. The baleful aura here was too dense, affecting the soul of a Zifu realm cultivator. The baleful aura could also interfere with the detection of spiritual sense. Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense was able to detect things up to 50 kilometers away. Here he could only detect things up to 1,000 meters away. To a Zifu realm cultivator, this distance wasn't much different from having their face pressed against each other. Adding on the fact that the mine was extremely winding, the stone walls were even more effective against spiritual sense than the baleful aura. If a cultivator was lying in ambush in one of the forks and wanted to ambush him, he wouldn't have much time to react. Wang Daoyuan gripped the bone sword in his hand, ready to summon the Xuanwu shield at any time to deal with a possible ambush. All of a sudden, his divine sense detected a wisp of spiritual power fluctuations about 200 meters in front of him. He immediately used the sword shadow godlight technique, creating 10 sword shadows to protect his body. He asked, "Who's there? If you don't come out, I'll attack." The trace of spiritual energy fluctuation was immediately retracted. Wang Daoyuan controlled a sword shadow to attack the source of the fluctuation. The sword shadow arrived in an instant, and the person hiding didn't dare to continue hiding. He took out a long sword and broke the sword shadow. He smiled and said, "Daoyu's spiritual sense is very sharp. Even in this kind of place you can still find me." This person was wearing a black cloak. There were almost no blood chi fluctuations on his body, and his spirit energy fluctuations were extremely weak. It was impossible to tell what cultivation level he was at. The hand that held the sword was all skin and bones, and the skin was still grayish-black. Wang Daoyuan condensed another sword shadow and asked, "What does Daoyu want? Do you want to fight to the death or get out of my way?" The black-clothed man replied, "Of course I'm making way for you. This old man has been corroded by this evil qi until I'm neither a human nor a ghost. My spiritual power has long been exhausted, and I can only rely on my remaining Jinyuan to support myself. How can I be Daoyu's opponent?" This person's spiritual energy had been exhausted, and he could only rely on his true essence, so he wouldn't be able to last for long. In his eyes, he was just food that could prolong his life. He would never let him go. Fighting was inevitable. His body had already deteriorated to such an extent. Once his soul was injured, he would probably die immediately. It was not possible to refine a clone. However, the black-clothed man had stayed in this mine for quite some time. He could fish for information from the black-clothed man and figure out the situation in the mine. Wang Daoyuan asked, "Since Daoyu can't stay here any longer, have you thought of leaving?" The black-clothed man shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I was imprisoned here because I committed a crime. If I want to leave, I'll have to pay 5 times the amount of heaven ferocious gold to atone. There's a Tier 4 array formation guarding outside the cave. Previously, many Daoyu tried to force their way out, but they were all killed by the array formation. This heaven ferocious gold vein has been mined for close to 10,000 years. How much can there be left? I've been here for more than 20 years and have only dug up 5 kilograms. After being corroded by the evil qi for 20 years, life and death are only a matter of time. I wonder if Daoyu has any spiritual items on him. I'm willing to use all the heaven ferocious gold I have to exchange for some spiritual items with Daoyu." Wang Daoyuan shook his head. When I came in, the medicinal pills and other spiritual items I had on me were all confiscated by the guards. Now all that's left is this bone sword and 2 empty storage pouches. Everything else is gone. The black-clothed man was somewhat puzzled. Dao, didn't you commit a crime and get sent here? How can you bring medicinal pills and other spiritual items here? Wang Daoyuan replied, I accepted a mission from Bloodfiend City's mission hall and came here to mine for Heaven Ferocious Gold. I saw that the reward for the mission was 500 kilograms of Heaven Ferocious Gold and 1,000 spirit stones. It was quite generous, so I came. The black-clothed man had a mocking look on his face. That mission has been hung up in Bloodfiend City for thousands of years. In the past it was indeed an excellent mission. At that time, given the power of Zifu disciples like us, digging up 500 kilograms of Heaven Ferocious Gold really didn't take much effort. But in the past few thousand years, the Heaven Ferocious Gold vein has been completely mined out. Only in the deepest parts will there be a chance to find some ore and refine a few taels of Heaven Ferocious Gold. Completing the mission can take hundreds of years. But the baleful aura there is extremely strong. Very few people can withstand it, and even those who can last for 10 years are few and far between. Now, although this place is called the Heaven Ferocious Gold Mine, it's actually a prison. It's specially used to imprison cultivators like me who have committed crimes. As for why the mission hasn't been revoked, perhaps it's because the Heaven Ferocious Gold Mine's guardian wants to deceive someone like Dao Yu who doesn't know the truth. Before entering the mine, they'll use the excuse of inspecting the items as an excuse to get some oil. If they're lucky enough to encounter a cultivator who can dig up 500 kilograms of Heaven Ferocious Gold, they'll make a huge profit. Dao Yu just entered and still has a lot of spiritual energy in his body, and he's also a pentaspirit veins cultivator. I wonder if you can give me a bit of metal-type spiritual energy? I'm willing to use Heaven Ferocious Gold in exchange. Wang Daoyuan nodded. How much Heaven Ferocious Gold is Dao Yu willing to give, and how much spiritual energy do you want to exchange for it? Hearing Dao Yu's intention to exchange, the black-clothed man hurriedly untied the storage pouch at his waist. He said excitedly, all of my Heaven Ferocious Gold is here. There's a bit more than 17 kilograms in total. Please kindly accept it, Dao Yu. As for spiritual energy, it'll be fine as long as it's comparable to 10 mid-grade spirit stones. The total amount of spiritual energy in 10 mid-grade spirit stones was roughly 20% of an ordinary Zifu disciple's total spiritual energy. 17 kilograms of Heaven Ferocious Gold, even if it was only mid-grade 3rd tier, was worth at least 100,000 spirit stones. This place was near a 4th tier spirit vein. If there was high-grade 3rd tier or even low-grade 4th tier Heaven Ferocious Gold, its value would be even higher. Wang Daoyuan nodded. As you wish, Dao Yu. The black-clothed man tossed over a storage pouch. Demonic cultivators weren't easy to deal with, especially those on the verge of death. There was definitely a trap in this storage pouch. Wang Daoyuan had long since prepared for it. When the storage pouch was still 50 meters away from him, he immediately used the cloud mist escape to travel 1.5 kilometers through the air. The moment he escaped, his storage bag exploded and black smoke gushed out from it. This black smoke contained an extremely dense baleful aura, and it seemed to be mixed with corpse poison. Soon after, over 100-inch-long poison needles shot out from the black smoke. Over 10 of them flew towards Wang Daoyuan. 10 sword shadows flew out from Wang Daoyuan's side to block the poison needles. In the end, he lost 3 sword shadows to shoot down all the needles. He felt a lingering fear. If he hadn't been prepared, this move would have been enough to take his life. Seeing that his attack had failed, the black-clothed man turned and left. Wang Daoyuan replenished his sword shadows and used them to chase after the old man. He himself followed behind the sword shadows. The black-clothed man took out a coffin. When the coffin opened, there was a high-grade 3rd-tier corpse inside. Looking at the corpse's attire, it should be a wandering cultivator of Blood Demon City. This corpse had bulging muscles and silver skin. It should be one of the legendary silver-armored corpses. Silver-armored corpses had extremely strong defensive abilities. Cultivators of the same level would find it hard to break through their defenses. Using the corpses of blood demons to refine a silver-armored corpse would only increase its defensive abilities. In addition, the baleful aura here was extremely dense. This corpse's strength was probably comparable to a peak Zifu disciple. The 10 sword shadows struck the silver-armored corpse, producing a metallic sound. The silver-armored corpse was actually unharmed. The black-clothed man let out a strange laugh. This time, Dao Yu won't be able to escape. It's best if you give up resisting. I haven't tasted fresh blood for many years. If I'm happy, I might even let your soul go into reincarnation. Chapter 462. Elite zombies were divided into iron-armored zombies, silver-armored zombies and gold-armored zombies. Iron plate corpses were just slightly tougher than regular refined corpses of the same level. It was nothing special. The silver-armored corpse's body was extremely strong. It was difficult for cultivators of the same level to break through it, but they generally had weaknesses. As long as one could attack its weakness, the entire silver-armored corpse could be crippled. If it was refined into a metal elite zombie, it would have no weaknesses. Only absolute strength could destroy it. Although silver-armored corpses had weaknesses, they were usually extremely secretive. Other than the person who refined them, no one knew their exact location. As for this silver-armored corpse, its strength should be comparable to the peak of the Zifu realm. If he couldn't find his weakness, even if he used the 5 elements devil-subduing seal, it would be difficult for him to win. After all, the 5 elements devil-subduing seal specialized in subduing fiendish cultivators and devils. It did not have any special effect on the silver-armored corpse. However, no matter how strong the silver-armored corpse was, it still needed someone to control it. Rather than fighting the silver-armored corpse to the death, he might as well kill the black-clothed man. When the master of the corpse refiner was killed, he would enter a berserk state and his strength would increase greatly. However, without any intelligence to speak of, it was not difficult to deal with. Moreover, this berserk state would not last for too long, and he would soon fall into a deep sleep. As long as it was not stimulated, it could continue sleeping. The silver-armored corpse pounced towards Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan put away his bone sword and took out his white tiger blade and black tortoise shield. When the silver-armored corpse pounced over, Wang Daoyuan used cloud mist escape and flitted past the right side of the silver-armored corpse. With the black tortoise shield in his left hand and the white tiger blade in his right, he slashed across the side of the silver-armored corpse's waist. The white tiger blade left a shallow wound on the waist of the silver-armored corpse with an ear-piercing sound of metal scraping against each other. The sharpness of the white tiger blade, coupled with Wang Daoyuan's physical strength and attainments in the way of the sword, could only barely cut open the silver-armored corpse's skin. Although the silver-armored corpse was a refined corpse and its body was stiff, its speed was not slow at all. After his attack was dodged, he turned around and threw a punch at Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan used the black tortoise shield to receive the punch. The strength of a third-tier upper-grade refined corpse was completely dependent on its physical strength. It was not enough to break the black tortoise shield, but the impact was not small. Wang Daoyuan was knocked back several feet with his shield. He only stopped when he hit the stone wall of the tunnel. Fortunately, the 5 spirits' immortal transformation art tempered the body from the inside out. His internal organs were also very strong and could withstand the impact. He only felt his blood and qi boiling, but it was nothing serious. If it were an ordinary cultivator, they would definitely suffer from internal injuries if they took the silver-armored corpse's punch head-on. Seeing this, the man in black was pleasantly surprised. Daya's body is so strong. I thought I was lucky enough to get a metal-type cultivator and refine him into a silver-armored corpse. I didn't expect that I would encounter another good material for refining a silver-armored corpse today. It seems that I can't drink your blood anymore. It would be more useful to refine you into a silver-armored corpse. With that, he took out a silver sword and attacked Wang Daoyuan. This was a high-grade, third-grade magic artifact. Judging from how effortlessly he was controlling it, this person should be a late-stage Zifu disciple. Wang Daoyuan brandished the white tiger blade in his hand and chopped at the flying sword. The flying sword was actually intact. When the two swords collided, the silver sword even burst out with a strong baleful aura. It should be refined from heavenly demon gold. The man in black withdrew his sword and the silver-armored corpse pounced over again. Wang Daoyuan used the cloud mist escape again and moved closer to the man in black while dodging the silver-armored corpse's attack. This man in black looked like he had exhausted all his qi and didn't have much spiritual power left. No matter how he looked at it, he was easier to deal with than the silver-armored corpse. He poured a large amount of spiritual power into the white tiger blade and slashed at the man in black. The man in black blocked with his sword. Wang Daoyuan let go of the white tiger blade and punched his right fist with fire attribute spiritual power at the man's head. The man in black's left hand collided with Wang Daoyuan's fist and was knocked back more than 3 meters. At this time, the skin on the man's left fist was burned by pure yang qi and emitted a rotten smell. Wang Daoyuan's right fist was also left with a pitch-black mark. A strong corrosive yin qi followed his meridians and drilled into his body. This was the symptom of corpse qi entering the body. He circulated his fire attribute spiritual power and used pure yang qi to burn the corpse qi. This person obviously still had spiritual wisdom and almost no qi in qi, but there was still a little bit. Logically speaking, he should be a human. However, a living person shouldn't be so afraid of pure yang qi and shouldn't have such a strong corpse qi. Recalling the records left behind by the 10,000 corpse Taoist master, this guy should be half human and half corpse, or a living corpse. Human cultivators forcibly refined corpse qi into their bodies and merged it with qi and blood to strengthen their bodies. Once the corpse qi passed through qi and blood, this person could be considered a living corpse. This kind of transformation was almost irreversible. After becoming a living corpse, the body would continuously transform into a refined corpse. Even if the body completely turned into a refined corpse, the mind would not be affected. The soul or divine soul would still have the characteristics of a living person. A refined corpse completely merged the body and divine soul, but the divine soul couldn't completely merge with the body. The lifespan of the divine soul didn't change. When it reached the end, it still had to enter reincarnation. Without the divine soul, a half-corpse would become the same as an ordinary refined corpse. Half-corpses had strong bodies and were more flexible than refined corpses. They could better cultivate the Tao of corpse control, so their strength couldn't be underestimated. He refined himself into a half-corpse and suffered the pain of corpse qi entering his bones. If it wasn't a last resort, no one would be so cruel to themselves. He probed, "Dao really is a ruthless person. You actually refined yourself into a half-corpse." Hearing this, the black-clothed man was stunned and immediately said, "Dao really is experienced and knowledgeable. You actually know about half-corpses. I've been trapped here for more than 200 years and should have died long ago. It's just that I haven't taken my revenge and am unwilling to die like this. In my early years, I obtained a corpse refining inheritance and killed other cultivators to refine them into refined corpses for my use. My body couldn't resist the erosion of the baleful aura, so I borrowed the corpse qi of this silver-armored corpse to refine myself into a half-corpse. Now I'm not far from the end of my life. It's impossible for me to advance further on my Tao path. I just want to leave this damned place, return to Blood Demon City and slaughter my enemies. Your body is strong. If you refine yourself into a silver-armored corpse, you may be able to help me escape." Saying this, he pounced towards him with the silver-armored corpse. Wang Daoyuan used the cloud mist escape again to dodge the attack. Going on like this wasn't a solution. Although refined corpses and half-corpses were difficult to cultivate in terms of endurance, they far surpassed human cultivators. Although this half-corpse strength wasn't as good as his, it was impossible to kill him instantly under the protection of the silver-armored corpse. If this continued, he would die without a doubt. Although the scarlet yang real fire restrained refined corpses, the baleful aura here was dense and would offset the power of the scarlet yang real fire. However, he could use the Gui water death flame to attack the half-corpse. The half-corpse still had the divine soul. The Gui water death flame had the effect of burning the divine sense and soul. It was still very destructive to him. Drawing out a wisp of Gui water death flame from the space of the spirit pearl, he continuously injected water attribute spiritual power. The Gui water death flame burned fiercely. At the same time, he used the divine fire burning sky technique to control the Gui water death flame. After receiving the inheritance of the 100 spirits true lord, the power of the divine fire burning sky technique greatly increased, and the power of the flame could be increased by 4 to 5 times. The Bai Feng phantom carried the Gui water death flame and rushed towards the half-corpse. The half-corpse probed the divine sense into the Gui water death flame. A black flame followed his divine sense to burn his forehead. The half-corpse knew that this thing attacked the divine soul and immediately let the silver-armored corpse block in front. The silver-armored corpse didn't have a divine soul, and the soul essence was also integrated with the body. The Gui water death flame couldn't hurt his soul essence and couldn't cause substantial damage. However, the corpse qi was also derived from yin qi. The gui water death flame could still burn part of the silver-armored corpse's corpse qi. The half-corpse controlled the flying sword and constantly attacked him. While Wang Daoyuan dodged the attack, he constantly increased the input of spiritual power, making the gui water death flame burn more vigorously. The black flame quickly wrapped the silver-armored corpse's whole body. The half-corpse's intelligence wasn't low. He quickly saw that Wang Daoyuan's purpose was to use the gui water death flame to explore the silver-armored corpse's weakness. His divine sense didn't dare to touch the gui water death flame. The refined corpse couldn't cast spells and couldn't quickly extinguish the fire. Soon Wang Daoyuan noticed that the silver-armored corpse's navel was abnormal. The corpse qi in other places could be quickly replenished after being burned by the gui water death flame, but the navel couldn't be replenished. The weakness of this silver-armored corpse was at the navel. Chapter 463. Seeing that Wang Daoyuan had found the silver-armored corpse's weakness, the half-corpse took out his flying sword to attack. Wang Daoyuan used the black tortoise shield and white tiger blade to catch the flying sword and used his consciousness to interfere with the half-corpse's control of the flying sword. The half-corpse's body could not nourish the soul well, so his consciousness was not strong. With his consciousness suppressed, he could not control the flying sword freely. Wang Daoyuan took out a universe ring from the space of the soul pearl and wrapped the flying sword with the soul-binding silk cloak, cutting off the connection with his consciousness and forcefully storing the flying sword into the universe ring. Without the flying sword, the half-corpse's strength was greatly reduced. He wanted to get rid of it, but the silver-armored corpse pounced over again. It seemed that if he did not get rid of the silver-armored corpse, he would not be able to take down this half-corpse. Although the silver-armored corpse's navel was its weakness, it was not something that could be broken so easily. Wang Daoyuan held the white tiger blade with both hands and injected a large amount of spirit energy into it. Using the sword shadow divine light technique, 10 sword shadows opened up a path in front. With the black tortoise shield in front of him, he used the cloud escape and attacked the silver-armored corpse's navel. Now that he had taken the path of body refinement, his physical strength had increased greatly. With the white tiger blade in hand, his physical strength would be added to its power. When using a flying sword to kill enemies, it only used spirit energy and consciousness. Compared to wielding a long sword, its power was still much weaker. Non-body refinement cultivators did not have physical strength, so the difference in power was not great. Generally, they would not fight with a long sword. But body refinement cultivators still liked to use a long sword when attacking with all their strength. Seeing that he had seen through the silver-armored corpse's weakness, he planned to kill it in one blow. The half-corpse rushed up, wanting to help the silver-armored corpse out. Wang Daoyuan controlled the Beiyuan phantom and pounced on the half-corpse. The Beiyuan phantom was now made up of black flames. Once touched by something with a soul, the soul would definitely be damaged. The half-corpse did not dare to go forward, and without his flying sword he was no match for the Beiyuan phantom. The silver-armored corpse wanted to dodge, but he could not fly. It was impossible to escape Wang Daoyuan's high-level escape technique with his inflexible limbs. The 10 sword shadows and the white tiger blade struck the silver-armored corpse's navel without any deviation. The strength of the silver-armored corpse's navel was also extremely high. The 10 sword shadows could only penetrate an inch deep. Following closely behind, the white tiger blade pierced half a foot deep into the silver-armored corpse's spine. Under the pain, the silver-armored corpse attacked Wang Daoyuan with all its might. Unfortunately, its weakness had been exposed and its physical strength was rapidly declining. With the black tortoise shield in hand, Wang Daoyuan resisted with all his might and was not pushed back. He infused a large amount of fire-attributed spirit energy into the white tiger blade and infused it into the silver-armored corpse. The pure yang qi of the fire attribute quickly corroded the silver-armored corpse's internal organs. The silver-armored corpse roared again and again, desperately attacking Wang Daoyuan. At this point it was already dead for sure, so Wang Daoyuan did not take its attack head-on. He drew his sword and retreated, dodging the attack. The silver-armored corpse's body emitted a rotten smell, and the silver light on its body gradually disappeared. The gui water death flame continued to burn on its body. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the corpse qi within the silver-armored corpse was burned to nothing. The silver-armored corpse had become an ordinary mummy. It couldn't even be considered a refined corpse. The half-corpse was chased around by the Beiyuan's phantoms. After being refined into a half-corpse, its strength was not without loss. Without much spirit energy in its body, the power of the spells it cast was extremely poor. The least affected was flying swords, but his flying swords were gone. Those half-baked spells were not enough to threaten the divine sky-burning technique. Although the physical body was strong, it was still not very useful against spiritual fire. The half-corpse hurriedly begged for mercy. "Dai, spare my life. All I ask for in this life is nothing more than revenge. I only ask that Dao you can help me get out and take revenge. After that, I am willing to destroy my soul and leave behind a complete corpse." After a half-corpse dies, its physical body and corpse chi will perfectly merge. It is not impossible to refine it into a metal-armored corpse. Wang Daoyuan said disdainfully, "A metal-armored corpse is nothing. After I form my Jindan, a metal-armored corpse can be destroyed with a flip of my hand. For me, cultivating the Tao of corpse is not very useful. It also damages the physical body. I disdain it." Finished speaking, he controlled the Beiyuan's phantoms to wrap around the half-corpse's body, but did not directly attack its spirit. The half-corpse said again, "This mine is extremely complicated. The fiendish qi and rocks block the consciousness. Even if a Jindan cultivator came down, it would be impossible to figure out the situation in a short time. And I have stayed in this mine for more than 200 years. I know it like the back of my hand. Dao's strength is not bad. If you cooperate with me, we can definitely escape from this damned place." Wang Daoyuan's face was full of disdain. "If you want to understand the mine, there is no need to keep you." Finished speaking, a soul-severing blade struck towards the half-corpse's forehead. Previously he thought it was a lamp that had run out of oil and could not be refined into a doppelganger. Now that he knew it was a half-corpse, there was naturally no problem. A half-corpse could not be killed casually. A half-corpse's violet palace was not nourished by a physical body. No matter how strong it was before, it could barely maintain it now. This soul-severing blade even held back its strength, but it still broke through the half-corpse's violet palace and injured its spirit. Then he used the soul-severing blade to break the half-corpse's spirit and injected it into the subsoul before storing it in the spiritual pearl. As for the silver-armored corpse's corpse, he burned it with fire. Half a day later, the half-corpse doppelganger finished fusing with the subsoul. Wang Daoyuan pried into the half-corpse's memories and found out that the half-corpse's name was Ping. He was born in the Blood Demon City and his parents were ordinary people. He also married and had children in the Blood Demon City and joined the Blood Demon Army. Later on, he offended a high-ranking member of the Blood Demon Army and was framed to this damned place. His family was also slaughtered. His physical body was not strong and could not withstand the fiendish qi in the mine, so he had no choice but to refine himself into a half-corpse. In this mine, there were 5 powerful cultivators at the peak of the Violet Palace realm. Although his personal strength was not strong, he could still be on equal footing with them by relying on the silver-armored corpse. The 6 of them each occupied a territory and did not interfere with each other. Ping even opened up a cave abode in this space as a place to stay. He had collected a lot of infernal gold over the years, including low-grade 4th-grade infernal gold, which was placed in the cave abode. Wang Daoyuan had just gone through a big battle and his spiritual sense was exhausted. He needed to find a safe place to recuperate. He released his doppelganger Ping from the spiritual pearl and had him lead the way to his cave abode. Ping was proficient in refining and array formations, especially in array formations. He was actually at the high-grade 3rd grade and was also at the middle-grade 3rd grade in refining. With his attainments in array formations, his cave abode had never been discovered by anyone. With him leading the way, they soon arrived at the entrance of the cave abode. This was an ordinary stone wall in the mine. Even with Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense, he could not see anything special about it. Ping's doppelganger took out a token. The token flashed and the stone wall in front of them retreated, revealing an entrance that was 1 foot wide and 1 foot tall. Wang Daoyuan followed behind Ping and entered the cave abode. It was a completely different world inside. It was a stone room that was 300 feet wide and more than 100 feet tall. The furnishings were simple. There was a stone couch and a stone table. There were 3 storage bags on the table. One of them contained 500 to 600 caddies of high-grade 3rd grade infernal gold. When he opened the second storage bag, a thick malevolent aura surged towards him. Even with his physique he could not withstand it. There were a few fist-sized infernal gold pieces that weighed more than 15 caddies in total. He hurriedly fastened the storage bag and kept it in the spiritual pearl. There was also a storage bag that contained a few dermic weapons of fiendish cultivators. Since they were not of much use to him, he kept them in the spiritual pearl as well. He took out a spirit isolation formation disc from the spiritual pearl and handed it to his doppelganger. The spirit isolation formation could isolate the spirit chi of the 9 elements. However, it was not very effective against the malevolent aura and could only weaken it slightly. Wang Daoyuan took out a few black jade lotus seeds and consumed them. He drank a few mouthfuls of spirit wine and meditated to recover his spirit energy and spirit consciousness. There were no traces of metal elemental spiritual fire in the mine that Jing Ping controlled. He did not dare to provoke the other 5 Peak Violet Palace realm cultivators. The fact that they could live a normal life here meant that they were all ruthless people. It was best not to provoke them. However, he could not return empty-handed after entering a treasure trove. Jing Ping knew of a place where he could still find infernal gold. Even the 4th grade infernal gold could be found there. Chapter 464. After Wang Daoyuan recovered his spirit power and consciousness, he was not in a hurry to dig for the heaven hellish gold. After all, the experts in the mine all had their own territories. Other cultivators would not come to Jing Ping's territory. His main goal was to find the metal attribute spirit fire. Although Jing Ping did not find any traces of the spirit fire, he could not give up. He still had to work hard. Using the spirit-seeking compass to explore the surroundings, even if he could not find the spirit fire, he could dig up more 4th grade heaven hellish gold. The spirit-seeking compass in the past was a 2nd grade Dharma artifact and had a closer detection range. Moreover, it was severely affected by the evil aura in the mine and could not be used. He was now a 3rd grade weapon refiner and had 2 weapon refiner clones. He could refine a 3rd grade mid-grade spirit-seeking compass. Of course, this spirit-seeking compass could not be compared to the one Zhou Xian of the Archaic Arcanum sect took out when exploring the hidden cloud continent. In terms of using compasses, the Archaic Arcanum sect was the best. Even Zhou Xiao's natal Dharma artifact was the mysterious yin-yang compass. The functions of compasses and other things would be affected in this kind of mineral vein. Especially spiritual items with strong evil aura like the heaven hellish gold, which interfered greatly with the compass. In order to accurately detect the mines and find the metal attribute spirit fire, he had to make some improvements to the spirit-seeking compass. An ordinary spirit-seeking compass could search for the 5-element spirit chi, but his target was only metal attribute spirit chi and evil aura. It was not important to him whether or not he could search for spirit chi of other attributes. He just needed to determine the concentration of metal attribute spirit chi and evil aura. This meant that he had to modify a compass specifically to detect metal attribute spirit chi and evil aura. When Taoist Lei Yan was copying the legacy of the ancestors, Wang Daoyuan had copied down all of the tool runes. Among the copied patterns, some could determine the concentration of spirit chi and automatically search for the place with the highest concentration of spirit chi. To refine such a compass, there was no need to start from scratch. He only needed to use an ordinary 3rd grade spirit-seeking compass as a base and modify it with such patterns. In the space of the spirit pearl, Tu Yuming and Jing Ping, the 2 3rd grade weapon refiners, worked together and had 40 times the time. It was not difficult to modify a compass. He didn't need to improve the compass to perfection as long as it could be used. Before the improvement of the spirit-seeking compass was completed, Wang Daoyuan had nothing to do but cultivate, so he paid more attention to the situation in the space of the spirit bead. The purple cloud dragon pattern ginseng that he had planted before exploring True Monarch 100 Spirits abode was already over 1,000 years old. It had been harvested by his clone and stored in a jade box. A new batch had been planted, but it would take more than 10 years to harvest. These few years Wang Daoyuan had always been busy and did not have time to refine the purple rhyme pill either. Now, staying in this broken mine, not to mention the violent spiritual energy, there was also an extremely dense baleful aura. The baleful aura would affect one's soul. If one were to refine pills in a state where one's mind was not completely clear, an explosion would definitely be unavoidable. Since he still had some purple rhythm pills on hand, it wouldn't be a problem even if he didn't refine any pills for now. The concentration of spiritual qi in the space of the spiritual orb had already reached the level of upper-grade third stage. The peach tree sapling that nurtured the spiritual fire of life was also beginning to grow slowly. Its height had already reached 5 to 6 inches, and the spiritual fire of life was also becoming more vigorous. There were many spiritual objects around the spiritual fire of life. For example, the hidden cloud tea tender branch that he obtained from True Monarch 100 Spirit's small medicine garden last time was also planted here. The tender shoot back then had already become a tea tree more than 3 feet tall, and its grade had also already reached lower grade third stage. The Gui water death flame did not have much activity, but the surrounding Yellow Springs willow grew a little. Wang Daoyuan had no use for the Yellow Springs willow for the time being, so he had never cared about it. The changes around the dust-returning flame were not small. The Earth Attribute Spirit Vein continuously produced soil, forming a circular mound with a diameter of 1 foot and a height of more than 2 feet below the dust-returning flame. The dust-returning flame burned quietly above the mound, but it did not affect the surrounding spiritual plants either. Around the Scarlet Yang True Fire, several transplanted blood fire hibiscus had also grown a lot. The largest one was originally an old branch. Now it was already 20 to 30 feet tall, and the trunk's diameter was also more than a foot. The other blood fire hibiscus were all young shoots on the old branches, and now they were only 7 to 8 feet tall. The red-feathered crow who had been staying beside the Scarlet Yang True Fire gave Wang Daoyuan a headache. It had been 8 or 9 years since it hatched, and it had been more than 300 years in the space of the spirit bead. After more than 300 years, the fledgling was still only the size of an adult's fist. The fluff on the body was black and the fluff on both wings was red. There was no sign of growing feathers at all, and it still looked like a fledgling. Its cultivation was only a little higher than when it first came out of the shell. It was now middle grade rank 2, which was equivalent to the middle stage of foundation establishment. Even if it was a real divine beast, it should not grow so slowly. These years the red-feathered crow's life had been good. Every day, it ate the pine nuts of the red-scaled pine. The pine nuts it ate added up to dozens of middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators. Needless to say, it soaked in the Scarlet Yang True Fire every day, and there were a few blood fire hibiscus next to it. This was the most suitable environment for the red-feathered crow to live in. Even the 100 Spirits Lord could not provide such a good environment for the red-feathered crow. The 100 Spirits Lord's beast-taming inheritance was not in his hands, and there was no way to know the reason why the red-feathered crow was not growing. He could only ask his clone Cui Ming to check the 10,000 Spirits Atlas and the Beiyuan records. He wanted to see if other spiritual beasts with the bloodline of divine beast had similar situations. In the end, there was no such record in the Beiyuan records. In the 10,000 Spirits Atlas, he found some ways to raise other demon birds. The inheritance of the 1,000 Spirits sect might have come from the top force of the Valley of Beasts. In terms of demon beasts, the 1,000 Spirits sect was quite authoritative. According to the 10,000 Spirits Atlas, most demon birds were proud and unwilling to obey their masters easily. To completely tame them, one must start with the eggs of demon birds. It also emphasized that demon birds with extraordinary bloodlines after the fledgling hatched must not throw away the eggshell. This was because there might be something on the eggshell related to its bloodline. When the demon bird grew up and could swallow the eggshell could be fed to it. This would help the demon bird awaken its bloodline and grow quickly. Without the eggshell, ordinary demon birds might be fine. However, demon birds with extraordinary bloodlines were prone to slow growth and difficult to awaken their bloodline. This time Wang Daoyuan could be sure that the reason why the scarlet-feathered black chick could not grow was because of the lack of eggshell. Fortunately, he felt that the scarlet-feathered black chick's eggshell was quite extraordinary and might have some use, so he kept it properly. Now it really came in handy. He ordered his clone Cui Ming to take out the storage bag with the eggshell. He took out the eggshell and put it next to the scarlet-feathered black chick's mouth. When the little guy saw the eggshell, its eyes widened and it pounced on it, desperately pecking at the eggshell. The scarlet-feathered black chick's egg itself was the size of a goose egg, and there was not much in the eggshell, so it was quickly pecked clean by the chick. After eating the eggshell, the chick walked to the side of the red sun primordial fire, clung to the flame and fell asleep. As time passed, the scarlet-feathered black chick's body did not change much, but short reddish-gold feathers grew on its wings and tail. 2 years later, the scarlet-feathered black chick finally woke up. Its feathers were already more than an inch long, and the fluff had not completely faded. As soon as it woke up, it desperately ate the pine nuts of the red scale pine. Wang Daoyuan used his divine sense to explore the scarlet-feathered black chick's body. Although the little guy looked like a reincarnated hungry ghost, there was no problem with its body. Seeing that its new feathers were reddish gold, Wang Daoyuan named it Red Feather. These 2 years were equivalent to 80 years in the space of the Spirit Pearl. Xingping and Tu Yoming's clones were not idle, and they also had some results in improving the spirit-seeking compass. Using the Heaven Ferocious Gold as the raw material, they refined a spirit-seeking compass that could search for metal-type spiritual power and evil aura. Chapter 465. The improved spirit-seeking compass would emit 2 beams of spiritual light when activated. One of them was silver in color and was used to detect metal-type spiritual energy. The other was blue-black, used to detect baneful qi. The 2 beams of light couldn't penetrate the rock very well. They could only penetrate 3,000 feet into the rock stratum, which wasn't as good as the undisturbed Grade 2 spirit-seeking compass. The only advantage was that it wouldn't be disturbed by metal-type spirit qi and baneful qi. It was very suitable to be used here. After all, it was just a rough improvement. It was enough to detect metal-type spirit qi and baneful qi. Wang Daoyuan activated the spirit-seeking compass in his hand. 2 beams of light, one white and one black, flew out. Without using his divine sense to control the direction, the 2 beams of light would automatically search for the place with the densest metal-type spirit qi and baneful qi. The 2 beams of light entered the stone wall north of the cave abode. This made Wang Daoyuan relieved. He didn't have to choose between finding the Grade 4 Heaven Fiend Gold or the metal spirit vein or spirit core first. He still had to worry about being discovered when he dug outside the cave abode. It just so happened that Xingping's cave abode was hidden by an array formation. It was safer to dig here. Moreover, the place where Xingping dug out the Grade 4 Heaven Fiend Gold was a few hundred feet north of the cave abode. Next was Wang Daoyuan's best skill, digging holes. He drew out a wisp of dust-returning flame from the space and ignited the stone wall. This place wasn't like Mingsha Plain. Although there was a lot of earth-type spirit qi in the rocks, there was more metal-type spirit qi. The earth-type spirit qi obtained from burning the rocks could barely keep the dust-returning flame burning. Sometimes it wasn't enough and Wang Daoyuan had to use some extra spirit qi to replenish it. They didn't move very fast. The tunnel was 5 feet in diameter, so they could only move 30 to 40 feet forward in 2 hours. Half a month later they reached the place where Xingping dug out the Grade 4 Heaven Fiend Gold. The baneful qi and metal-type spirit qi were indeed denser here, and there were more Heaven Fiend Gold ores. Every few feet they could dig out 1 or 2 pieces of Grade 3 superior grade Heaven Fiend Gold the size of a fist. After a few days the spirit-seeking compass detected a piece of ore with strong baneful qi and metal-type spirit qi more than 300 feet ahead. Since it appeared in a Heaven Fiend Gold vein, it could only be a piece of Grade 4 Heaven Fiend Gold. Wang Daoyuan increased the output of his spirit energy and quickly pushed forward. 7 or 8 days later, an irregular spherical piece of Heaven Hellish Gold with a diameter of about 3 feet appeared. The baleful aura here was extremely strong, and Wang Daoyuan had no choice but to cast a level 3 spell that he basically didn't need, Flaming Divine Armor spell, relying on his fire spiritual energy to resist the corrosion of the baleful aura. Judging from the baleful qi, it was also a 4th tier lower grade. Controlling the returning dust flame, Xiaoqian burned all the rocks around this rank 4 inferior grade Heaven Demon Gold. Then he put it into a universe ring. This piece of 4th tier inferior grade Heaven Murderous Gold weighed at least 300 pounds. It was enough to make a group of early-stage golden core cultivators drool. Wang Daoyuan continued to drive the spirit-seeking compass after digging out this large piece of Heaven Hellish Gold. 2 streaks of light flew out. This time they didn't head north but rather diagonally downwards. Wang Daoyuan was overjoyed. He was looking for the place with the densest metal element spiritual qi and evil qi. He was looking for the source of the ore vein. Generally speaking, metal veins came from lava, and the source of the veins was relatively deep underground. The veins turned downwards, which meant that he was about to find the source. As he continued downward, the evil qi became stronger and stronger. The Flaming Divine Armor technique couldn't withstand it at all. He ordered the clone in the space to use the blood fire Fusang branch to refine an armor for himself. Half an hour later, the middle-grade Tier 3 armor was completed. It was complete with armor, greaves and a helmet. The armor was not even as strong as a third-tier lower-grade Dharma artifact. However, the armor was engraved with dense flaming patterns. Under the activation of his spiritual power, his entire body seemed to be wrapped in flames. Most of the evil qi was isolated outside. This way he could stay in this dense evil qi for a long time. He controlled the returning dust flame and continued downward. After half a month, the evil qi became denser and denser. Even with the blood fire Fusang armor, it was difficult to withstand. In this half a month he didn't find any large pieces of heaven hellish gold. He only dug up a few pieces that were not even the size of a fist. At this moment, the two streaks of light of the spirit-seeking compass separated. The greenish-black light headed towards the southwest, while the silver light continued to head downwards towards the north. His goal was to find the metal spiritual fire. Naturally, he wasn't interested in the evil qi. The direction of the blue-black light should be the earth vein evil qi that formed the heaven hellish gold. Wang Daoyuan followed the direction of the silver light and continued forward. Next, there was only the pure and extremely violent metal element spiritual energy. With the metal spiritual qi supporting it, the evil qi couldn't go any deeper. Wang Daoyuan didn't need to wear the blood fire Fusang armor anymore. Without the evil qi, there was naturally no heaven hellish gold below. Wang Daoyuan dug up a few pieces of black iron crystals. These were originally ordinary black iron. After being cleansed by the metal spiritual qi for many years, the impurities were removed and they became completely transparent. The black iron crystals weren't very strong, but they contained extremely pure metal spiritual qi. They were excellent supplementary materials for refining metal spiritual artifacts and nurturing metal spiritual artifacts. The heaven hellish gold above should be formed by the black iron crystals being corroded by the evil qi. The deeper he dug, the denser the metal spiritual qi became. At this moment, the density of the metal spiritual qi was very close to 4th tier midgrade. The distance between this place and the metal spiritual vein of Blood Demon Ridge was also getting closer and closer. Wang Daoyuan continued forward. 5 days later, the spirit-seeking compass found a hole 300 feet diagonally below. The hole was filled with pure metal spiritual qi, and the density had reached the limit of a 4th tier mid-grade spiritual vein. Wang Daoyuan was overjoyed. He had dug up the metal spiritual vein's spiritual eye. Whether Blood Demon Mountain had a metal spiritual fire or not depended on this. Whether there was a spiritual fire or not, this trip was about to end. Wang Daoyuan was full of energy. He urged the dust-returning flame to burn the rock layer. At this rate he would be able to reach the spiritual eye in 8 or 9 days at most. Controlling the dust-returning flame didn't take much effort. He urged the spirit-seeking compass to explore in other directions. Since this place could produce many black iron crystals, it might also produce other precious metal spiritual qi. Before entering the heaven hellish gold mine, he had heard that Blood Demon City had Tai pure gold Oregon. And Tai pure gold ore must have a large amount of metal spiritual qi. His goal was the spiritual eye, which was the place most likely to produce Tai pure gold Oregon. If he could find a Tai pure gold ore, he might be able to pick up a few pieces of 4th tier Tai pure gold. The spirit-seeking compass really did find a metal spiritual material, but it was more than 300 feet to the east. Because his spirit-seeking compass was too crude, it could only detect pure metal spiritual qi. From this, he deduced that there might be a metal spiritual material. As for what kind of material it was hard to say whether it was Tai pure gold or not. The most important thing now was the metal spiritual fire. Even 4th tier Tai pure gold was far less important than the spiritual fire. He continued to push toward the spiritual eye. After more than 20 days he finally reached the location of the spiritual eye. The dust-returning flame burned through the rock wall where the spiritual eye was, and a pure metal spiritual qi gushed out. This concentration was only a hair away from 4th tier spiritual qi. The metal spiritual qi dissipated and Wang Daoyuan walked into the hole. The hole wasn't big, only 2 or 3 feet in diameter. At the bottom of the hole there were dense cracks in the rock. The metal spiritual qi seeped out from these cracks. In the center of the hole, there was an irregular round silver metal ball more than a foot in diameter. Wang Daoyuan was no stranger to this thing. It was Tai pure gold. Inside the Tai pure gold, there were violent metal spiritual chi fluctuations. This piece of Tai pure gold wasn't perfect. There was a crack at the bottom that went deep inside. Wang Daoyuan's divine sense penetrated the crack and probed inside the Tai pure gold. He saw a silver flame inside. The flame was only as thick as a chopstick and less than an inch tall. Chapter 466. The aura emitted by this flame was very similar to that of the Tai essence gold. It seemed that the Tai essence gold had condensed such a flame under the nourishment of extremely rich metal spiritual energy. The Tai essence gold had an extremely strong murderous aura. Perhaps this flame had similar characteristics. Of course, it was hard to say what it could do. The current spiritual energy fluctuation of this flame was not strong. It was only of the third level of the middle grade. Perhaps it had not been nurtured for long enough. With this metal spiritual fire, the 5 elements spiritual fires were finally gathered. This piece of Tai essence gold was worthy of being a 4th level middle grade material. The murderous aura it emitted was extremely sharp. Even with Wang Daoyuan's physical body, it still left small wounds. Wang Daoyuan was so excited that he did not notice that there were many small wounds on his body. He put the entire piece of Tai essence gold into the space of the spiritual pearl and placed it near the metal spiritual vein. The metal spiritual fire came out of the Tai essence gold and merged with the spiritual vein. The Tai essence gold was put into the 100 spirit ring. After all, this thing's murderous aura was too strong. Directly putting it in the space of the spiritual pearl might destroy many spiritual plants. After his consciousness left the space, Wang Daoyuan felt a little pain on his body. At this time he was already covered in wounds. His clothes were also torn. Although the wounds were not deep, the murderous aura had entered his body and caused extreme pain. He mobilized his fire spiritual energy to consume the murderous aura. Only then did he feel better. Without the murderous aura, these wounds were just ordinary external injuries. He used the rejuvenation technique on himself and the wounds were almost healed. Then he checked the metal spiritual material vein that he had discovered earlier. He released the dust-returning flame at the vein and continued to burn the passage. He did find some ores. However, these ores were mostly black iron crystals. The spiritual energy fluctuations were at least of the 4th level lower grade. A few of them were of the 4th level middle grade. In addition to the black iron crystals, there were very few pieces of Tai essence gold the size of a finger. The Tai essence gold vein should be above. However, Wang Daoyuan did not dare to dig any more. The Tai essence gold vein was extremely important to any force. There would definitely be many backup plans to protect the vein. If he continued to dig up, he might be discovered. He had already obtained the spirit fire and a large piece of level 4 Tai essence gold. Although there was a hole in the inside, the remaining part still weighed more than 50 kilograms. In addition to the heaven ferocious metal he obtained earlier, it was sufficient for him to refine the white tiger saber to medial grade tier 4. There was no need for him to continue taking risks. Since such a large piece of primordial gold essence and a metal attribute spiritual fire could be found here, they must not have been discovered. He wasn't sure how far this place was from the ground, but he roughly estimated that it was at least more than 50,000 feet away. If it were anywhere else, the spiritual sense of a golden core cultivator might be able to detect something. However, this place was near a rank 4 spirit vein. Furthermore, there was a baleful aura and a murderous aura from primordial unity essence gold, which interfered with his spiritual sense. Even a peak golden core cultivator would not be able to detect this place with their divine sense. After he took away the metallic spirit fire, the cracks in the rocks below were still spewing out metallic spirit chi. The concentration of spiritual energy in Blood Demon City shouldn't have any obvious changes. There was no need to mobilize so many people to investigate the situation of the spirit veins. In order to not cause too much damage to the spirit vein, he had to leave this place as soon as possible. Before he left, he summoned a wisp of dust-returning flame and burned all the bloodstains he left behind. This was to prevent others from discovering the situation here and tracking him through the bloodstains. Demonic cultivators of the blood demon lineage were best at playing such tricks. After cleaning up the traces, Wang Daoyuan withdrew from the spiritual eye and used the earth mountain technique to seal the tunnel he had dug earlier. At this time, in an underground stone room of a palace in Blood Demon City, A young cultivator and a middle-aged cultivator were meditating. The young cultivator woke up from his meditation and said, "I feel a slight fluctuation in the spirit veins' spirit qi. It's a little different from before, but I can't tell what the difference is." The middle-aged cultivator smiled. "There are indeed some fluctuations. The spirit qi is slightly denser than before, so it's normal for the spirit vein to fluctuate slightly. It's just that you've just formed your golden core not long ago. Cultivators below the golden core realm won't be able to detect such minute fluctuations. After experiencing so much, they won't find it strange anymore. It's not a bad thing anyway, so you don't have to worry about it." The young cultivator nodded and closed his eyes, continuing to meditate. Wang Daoyuan naturally didn't know about the matter of the two golden core cultivators and continued to seal the tunnel. He wasn't afraid. Even if a golden core cultivator sensed the abnormality, they wouldn't be able to use their spiritual sense to probe the spiritual eye. If they wanted to get to the bottom of the situation, they would have to investigate many minds. It was impossible for a golden core cultivator to do this, so they could only send out Zifu disciples. A place like the innate fiend gold mine was so poorly managed that the mine tunnels were like a maze. Spiritual sense was also restricted here. Zifu disciples might need a long time to figure out the mine tunnels, so there was no need to rush to escape. The work of sealing the tunnel was much faster than digging the tunnel. It only took 4 to 5 days to seal all the tunnels that had been dug out. After returning to the cave, Wang Daoyuan's spiritual sense entered the space of the spiritual pearl. The scene in the space gave him a huge shock. The 5 spirit veins had all grown to 3 meters in length. The spirit veins had already reached the upper grade of the second stage, and the density of the spirit qi spewing out was still rapidly increasing. As the driving force behind the changes in the spirit veins, the 5 spirit fires had also undergone some changes. The mound of dirt below the dust-returning flame was slowly growing larger. Moreover, the speed at which the earth attribute spirit veins produced soil had increased dramatically. Wang Daoyuan also noticed that at the edge of the spiritual pearl's space, there was a circle of new soil that hadn't been planted. To him, 40 mu of space wasn't enough, so he had to frequently remove low-grade spirit plants. There was no way he could leave an empty space outside. He used his spiritual sense to measure the entire space, and the area of the spirit field seemed to have increased. The additional area of the spiritual fields was very small, less than 100 acres in total. For the entire space of the spiritual pearl, it was a drop in the ocean. But if it continued to increase, it would still be considerable. The increase in the space of the spiritual pearl was definitely caused by the 5 elemental spirit fires. The growth of the spirit fires was extremely fast, and their influence on the space of the spiritual pearl would also increase. The growth of the space of the spiritual pearl should also continue to increase. He also observed the changes in the other spirit fires. The life spirit fire didn't change much. It was just that the flame had become a little bigger and the life force it produced was richer. A spirit spring appeared where the Gui water death flame was. The amount of water in this spirit spring was extremely small, and it would take half an hour to fill a teacup. If it weren't for the bubbles that appeared from time to time, Wang Daoyuan really wouldn't have noticed it. The spring water that gushed out was exactly the same as the Gui water death spring. It also contained water spirit energy and pure yin qi, but the concentration was much lower. Now this spirit spring was only second grade. The spring water of the spirit spring came from the water spirit vein. As the spirit fire strengthened, the grade of the water spirit vein would also gradually increase, and the spirit spring would also grow. In time it might be able to catch up to the Gui water death spring. On the side of the scarlet yang true fire, the flame was a little bigger and the fire spirit energy and pure yang qi produced was a little more. The pure yang qi spread out and merged with the pure yin qi produced by the Gui water death flame above the dust returning flame, producing traces of purple qi. The flame of the metal attribute spirit fire was now more than 3 inches tall, emitting traces of killing intent, exactly the same as the killing intent of the Tai essence gold. It seemed that this spirit fire had inherited the characteristics of the Tai essence gold. If he refined it into a spiritual power seed, his metal-attributed spiritual power would be infused with killing intent. Together with the white tiger blade, its lethality would definitely increase greatly. Moreover, this metal attribute spirit power was especially suitable for nurturing the white tiger blade. It was born from the Tai essence gold, and its characteristics were similar to the Tai essence gold. Wang Daoyuan named it the Tai Golden Flame. Chapter 467. Wang Daoyuan tested the flow of time in and out of the space. It was still 40 times faster and did not increase. He did not know if the flow of time would increase after he repaired the crack in the spirit pearl. If he stayed in the mine, he would not be able to find out what was happening outside. If anyone discovered the change in the spirit vein, he would have to dig a hole and escape. If no one discovered the change in the spirit vein, he could hand over 250 kilograms of heaven ferocious metal and walk out openly. Since he did not know anything now, he could not take the risk. No one would be able to find him for the time being, and he could just stay in Jingping's cave abode for the time being. Now that he had gathered all 5 elements spirit fires, it was time to prepare for refining them. Refining spirit fires was extremely dangerous, and if he did not do it properly, there was a high chance he would be devoured by the spirit fire. If he was lucky, his dantian and meridians would be severely damaged and he would become a cripple. If he was lucky, he would be burned to ashes by the spirit fire. There were many ways to refine spirit fires, and each had its pros and cons. The 5 elements perfected being also recorded the way to refine spirit fires. His method was to first extract the essence of the spirit fire and condense the spirit energy seed. He would then draw the entire spirit fire into his body and fuse it with the spirit energy seed. Because the two were similar in nature, they could fuse well. The spirit fire would not reject the spirit energy seed too much and would not cause a backlash. The biggest flaw of the 5 elements perfected beings method was that cultivators who did not cultivate the 5 spirit immortal transformation technique would not be able to use it. Perfected Lord Bai Ling's fire controlling records also left a method to fuse spirit fires. Wang Daoyuan's cultivation technique was the 5 spirit immortal transformation technique after all, and it was more suitable to use the 5 elements perfected beings method. Even though he had all 5 elements spirit fires, he could not start refining them now. The 5 spirit fires were of different grades. The life spirit fire, dust returning flame, gui water hell flame and scarlet yang true flame were all superior grade 3 spirit fires. The newly obtained Tai Golden Flame was a middle grade 3 spirit fire. Due to the difference in grades, the 5 spirit energy seeds would not be balanced after refinement. In his last words, the 5 elements perfected being repeatedly warned that he had to balance the spirit energy seeds or he would lose his life. The 4 superior grade 3 spirit fires came from different sources and grew at different speeds as well. The dust returning flame was a superior grade 4 spirit fire in the hands of the 5 elements perfected being. The gui water death flame was born from a 4th level spirit spring and was once a 4th level spirit fire. The scarlet yang real fire was even more impressive. When it was in the hands of the 100 spirits true lord, it was at least a level 5 spiritual fire. These spiritual fires used to be of very high grades. After refining it, his growth would be even faster. Even if they were of the same grade when refined, the 3 flames would grow faster when cultivating in the future. He needed to constantly balance them in order to ensure that the 5 element spiritual fires grew at the same speed. If the grade was different during refinement, it would be much more difficult to maintain the balance of the 5 elements spiritual fire in the future. It might even affect the speed of cultivation. To be safe, he decided to let them grow in the space of the spirit orb first. Once they were of the same rank, he would refine them into his body. The growth of the spiritual pearl space also required spiritual fire. After refining the spiritual fire, it would affect the growth of the spiritual pearl space. No matter how important the space in the spiritual orb was, it was only a resource. His ultimate goal was to make himself stronger. After refining the spiritual fire, even if he did not take any elixirs, he could quickly cultivate to the peak of the golden core realm. His own cultivation was definitely more important than the growth of the spiritual pearl's space. However, it was not impossible to balance the growth of his own cultivation and the spiritual pearl's space. The scarlet yang true fire was different from the other 4 flames. It was not naturally formed but artificially created. Back then, after perfected Lord Bai Ling obtained the scarlet feathered crow, he used the scarlet feathered crow's natal true fire to condense the scarlet yang true fire. The method of condensing the spiritual fire was recorded in perfected Lord Bai Ling's fire control records. A small portion of the spiritual fire's origin was separated, which was the fire seed. Then the essence of the spiritual fire was extracted and condensed into a pseudo-spiritual fire. With sufficient spirit qi, pseudo-spiritual fire could burn stably. However, it was extremely fragile and would be extinguished easily at the slightest movement. Furthermore, if it was provided with sufficient spirit qi, its growth would be extremely slow. When the spiritual fire's origin was sufficient, the quantitative change would lead to a qualitative change and it would become a real spiritual fire. The original spiritual fire would be severely injured after losing a portion of its origin. However, as long as there was sufficient spirit qi, it could still recover. In the process of condensing the pseudo-spiritual fire, if there was not enough spirit qi, it was likely to fail. Even if it succeeded, the pseudo-spiritual fire would need to be nurtured for a long time. Back then, perfected Lord Bailing used more than 200 years to nurture the pseudo-spiritual fire into the scarlet yang true fire. During the nurturing process, the pseudo-spiritual fire could be extinguished easily and had to be paid attention at all times. Wang Daoyuan could also use this method to condense 5 pseudo-spiritual fires and nurture them in the space of the spiritual pearl. Even if the pseudo-spiritual fire was nurtured into a real spiritual fire, its grade would not be comparable to the original spiritual fire for a long time. However, it should be enough to maintain the growth of the spiritual pearl's space. With the flow of time 40 times faster, there was no need to worry about long nurturing and slow growth. The original spiritual fire was stronger, so naturally, it would be refined into the body to assist in cultivation. In this divine ferocious gold mine, the most suitable pseudo-spiritual fire to condense the Taiyi golden flame was the Taiyi golden flame. However, the Taiyi golden flame's grade was the lowest, and Wang Daoyuan did not have the experience of condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire, so he might fail. If he failed a few times, too much of the spiritual fire's origin would be consumed, and it would take a long time to raise its grade. Naturally, the Taiyi golden flame could not be used for such a destructive experiment. The one that was least afraid of damaging its origin was the life spiritual fire. When Wang Daoyuan first obtained the life spiritual fire, it was still hidden in the top bud of the peach tree sapling. Now the flame was more than 10 inches tall. With the support of the peach tree sapling, its growth speed was far from what other spiritual fires could compare to. Even if the origin of the spiritual fire was damaged, it could recover quickly. The surroundings were filled with metal element spirit qi and malevolent aura. Condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire could only be done in the space of the spiritual pearl. His spirit entered the space of the spiritual pearl, extracted a wisp of the life spiritual fire, and injected spirit energy to strengthen it. Finally, it formed a fist-sized ball of green flame. Then his spirit consciousness probed the boundary between the life spiritual fire and the top bud of the peach tree sapling. Half of the life spiritual fire's origin was in the top bud, and the other half was in the flame. Condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire required about 1/10 of the spiritual fire's origin. The life spiritual fire was gentler and could be directly probed with spirit consciousness to retrieve the origin of the spiritual fire. Soon, his spirit consciousness separated a sesame-sized green flame from the life spiritual fire. After the flame was separated, the height of the life spiritual fire, which was originally more than 10 inches tall, instantly decreased by an inch. Even though the flame was small, it possessed an extremely rich life force. If he refined this thing directly, there was even a possibility of reviving the dead. The origin of the spiritual fire was also considered a natural treasure. No one knew how it was formed and no one could create it casually. Even some high-grade cultivation methods required the use of heavenly materials and earthly treasures in order to cultivate spiritual fire. He had truly never heard of any ancient mighty being who could use spirit qi to create the origin of the spiritual fire directly. Injecting a sesame-sized flame into a fist-sized flame was the embryonic form of the pseudo-spiritual fire. Next, Wang Daoyuan converted all the spirit energy in his body into wood element and channeled it into the space of the spiritual pearl. His spirit controlled all the wood element spirit energy and injected it into the embryonic form of the pseudo-spiritual fire. After receiving a large amount of wood element spirit qi, the fist-sized green spirit fire did not grow. Instead, it shrunk continuously. The spirit energy within was absorbed by the sesame-sized origin of the spiritual fire, and the origin of the spiritual fire was also gradually growing. Before long, all the spirit energy in Wang Daoyuan's body was exhausted. As the pseudo-spiritual fire was not formed, it could not rely on the spirit chi in the space to burn on its own. The moment he stopped injecting spirit energy, the ball of spiritual fire would be extinguished instantly. It was useless even if he drank wine to recover his spirit energy. At this moment he could not circulate his cultivation technique. The spirit energy that he replenished was also not the wood element spirit energy with vitality and was useless. Chapter 468. At this moment Wang Daoyuan did not have any better ideas and could only extract the spiritual flame essence from the life spiritual fire. However, it was a pity that most of the spiritual energy was used to strengthen the origin of the spiritual flame and there would not be much essence left. There would only be a large amount of spiritual flame essence left when he used the dust-returning flame to burn the stone wall or the Gui water nether spring. There was not much essence left in the life spiritual fire and it was not enough to form the pseudo-spiritual flame. He was deep in the mineral vein and there was no way for him to find wood elemental spiritual energy. He was too arrogant. Back then, perfected Lord Hundred Spirits only formed the pseudo-spiritual flame when he was in the late-stage golden core stage. Furthermore, he had the help of the red-feathered crow back then. His current strength was too far from that of a true expert. There was no hope of forming it successfully and the pseudo-spiritual flame was about to be extinguished. Helpless, he sent the pseudo-spiritual flame to the side of the peach tree sapling. When forming the pseudo-spiritual flame, it must not come into contact with the original spiritual flame. Because the two had the same origin, the spiritual flame would devour the pseudo-spiritual flame the moment they met. Instead of wasting the spiritual flame's origin and essence, it was better to merge them into the life spiritual fire. The green pseudo-spiritual flame was not absorbed by the life spiritual fire when it came into contact with the peach tree sapling. Instead, the peach tree sapling grew a half-inch long side branch that carried the pseudo-spiritual flame. Pure wood elemental spiritual energy was injected into the pseudo-spiritual flame. There was no need for Wang Daoyuan to make a move now. Since the peach tree sapling could nurture the life spiritual fire to this extent, it was not a problem for it to stabilize the pseudo-spiritual flame. Wang Daoyuan had always been curious about the peach tree sapling. Through the 5 element sages Beiyuan records, he knew that the peach tree sapling should be a high-grade spiritual wood that was at least grade 5. However, he had no clue as to what kind of spiritual plant it was. Perfected Lord Hundred Spirits should know about the peach tree sapling, but it was a pity that Wang Daoyuan only obtained his cultivation technique and inheritance of fire control. The records of spiritual plants should be kept in the elixir hall in Perfected Lord Hundred Spirits' cave abode. It was a pity that the items in the elixir hall were divided by the 9 forces and Wang Daoyuan did not get anything. The wood-attributed false spirit flame should be stable. With the help of the peach blossom sapling, it should not take long for the false spirit flame to grow into a spirit flame. There was no need for him to care about the rest. It seemed that if he wanted to condense the pseudo-spirit fire again in the future, he would have to make use of the geographical advantage. For example, Mingxiao Plain's pseudo-spiritual fire was more suitable for condensing the dust-returning flame. Release the returning dust flame and burn him underground for a month or 2. You can get as much returning dust flame essence as you want. The fire tribute pseudo-spiritual fire was easy to deal with. There was a fiery sunstone mine under the Huangwei mountain. However, igniting the mineral vein might summon the lava. It would be fine if it didn't erupt, but once it did, Zifu disciples wouldn't even have a chance to flee. There was also the underground karst cave on the other side of the Gui water nether spring, which could lead directly to the magma, and could also be used to condense the fire attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. The best place to condense the water attribute pseudo-spirit fire was the Gui water nether spring. Metal-type pseudo-spiritual fire was the most difficult to find. If he wanted to take advantage of the geographical location, he would have to find at least a large 3rd-grade metal or vein or a 3rd-grade high-grade metal-type spirit vein. It was definitely not suitable to do this in this mine. Obtaining large amounts of metal-type spiritual fire essence was not like using the returning dust flame to pave the way. When condensing the pseudo-spiritual fire, he had to keep the tiny golden flame burning intensely for a long time in order to obtain sufficient spiritual fire essence. This was the underground of Blood Demon City. If he caused such a huge commotion, it would definitely disturb the metal-type spirit vein here. By then, as long as there were golden core cultivators in Blood Demon City, he would be discovered. There was no need to risk his life for the sake of condensing a pseudo-spiritual fire. Wang Daoyuan stayed in the cave abode for half a year and planned to leave as well. He had already found his main target, the metal-type spiritual fire, and also found a lot of heaven ferocious gold and a large piece of Tai essence gold. There was no point in continuing to stay here. He had to leave the tiger's den as soon as possible. In the past half a year, the embryonic form of the wood-type spiritual fire in the space of the spirit pearl had made considerable progress. On the side branches of the peach blossom sapling, the wood-type pseudo-spiritual fire had already stabilized and was no longer in its embryonic form. It could slowly absorb the dispersing wood-type spirit chi and convert it into spiritual fire essence. The peach blossom sapling was still injecting pure spirit chi and life force endlessly. It was only a matter of time before it turned into a true spiritual fire. He had also sent out his clone Xingping to patrol outside many times. However, he did not discover anyone entering. Could it be that the cultivators of Blood Demon City truly did not notice that he had arrived at the metal-type spirit vein and taken away the spiritual fire? Or could it be that the upper echelons of Blood Demon City had discovered the abnormality of the spirit vein? However, they did not know what was wrong and were planning to wait for him to jump out on his own accord. If it was the former, he would be fine after handing over 250 caddies of heaven ferocious gold. He would then turn in the mission and leave Blood Demon City. However, if it was the latter, it would be dangerous. This heaven ferocious gold vein had been abandoned for many years and the remaining ores were extremely rare. If he were to successfully dig out 250 caddies of heaven ferocious gold in just a few years, it would be too conspicuous. The upper echelons of Blood Demon City were thinking of waiting for someone to jump out. If he were to hand over the heaven ferocious gold, it might arouse suspicion. Demonic cultivators were not reasonable people. If there was anything suspicious, they would capture him immediately. While it did not matter if he were to hand over 250 caddies of heaven ferocious gold, he could not risk his life for it. After careful consideration, Wang Daoyuan decided to dig a tunnel to escape. With the Tai golden flame and the returning dust flame, it would be much easier to dig an escape tunnel. Xingping used to be a member of the Blood Demon Army and had a better understanding of the situation in Blood Demon City. Blood Demon City was located at the northern edge of the underground space. There were many underground mines. The entrance to the Heaven Ferocious Gold Mine was located to the west of Blood Demon City. The mine extended to the north. Above him was no longer the underground space of Blood Demon City, but the mountain range of Blood Demon Ridge. According to Xingping's memories, Blood Demon City had very few properties in the northwest. Every once in a while Blood Demon Army cultivators would patrol there. There were no permanent cultivators. Of course, the information that Xingping knew was all from over 200 years ago. It was hard to say what the current situation was. To the south was to continue deeper into the southern wasteland. To the north was the main metal-type spirit vein. To the northeast was the Tai Pure Gold Mine. To the west were many properties of Blood Demon City. These places were guarded by Blood Demon Army cultivators for a long time. To dig a tunnel to escape the northwest was indeed the best choice. He took out a wisp of the returning dust flame and a wisp of the Tai golden flame and placed them on the rock wall in the northwest of the cave. The combination of the two flames was very suitable for this place. The Tai golden flame burned the metal-type spirit energy in the rock layer, leaving behind loose rocks. The returning dust flame burned these rocks very quickly. Chapter 469. Wang Daoyuan came out of the tunnel and looked up, only to see two late-stage Sifu realm devil cultivators flying towards him. These two were burly men. One had a curly beard while the other had a goatee. They were both wearing the uniform of the Blood Demon Army. This place wasn't far from Blood Demon City. Once they started fighting, it was very likely that they would attract a large number of Blood Demon Army soldiers. It wasn't impossible to alarm Golden Core Devil cultivators. At this time he had to be courageous and pretend that he had come here by chance. He took out his bone sword and released his metal attribute spiritual energy. A baleful aura enveloped his body as he replied, "What do you care what I do here? If you want to kill me and steal my treasures, then come and try. Just the two of you aren't necessarily my match." Seeing him so arrogant, the two men were startled. Normally, when they were patrolling, the loose cultivators they met would be obedient upon seeing them wearing the uniform of the Blood Demon Army. This was the first time they had seen someone who dared to be so rude to them. The curly-bearded cultivator asked, "This is our territory. Since you're sneaking around here, we naturally have to investigate. Tell us, what are you doing here?" Wang Daoyuan continued to play dumb. Who doesn't know how to talk empty words? This is the wilderness and there's no defensive formation on the mountain. You say it's your territory, but I say it's mine. Don't talk nonsense with me. If you want to fight, then do it quickly. After beating you up, I still have to open up a cave and cultivate. Hearing this, the two men looked at each other. They really did believe that he had come here by chance and didn't know that this was Blood Demon City. The goatee cultivator asked, "May I ask where Dao you came from and why you opened up a cave here? If you can explain it clearly, then there's no need to fight. If you can't explain it clearly and fight, then it won't be just the two of us dealing with you." Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan knew that his act of foolishness had worked. He said disdainfully, "I'm not afraid of your numbers. I'll kill all of you. I came from 10,000 Blades Mountain. Devil cultivators didn't have a good time there, so I came to Blood Demon Ridge. I saw that the spiritual energy here was dense, so I settled down here. What? This ownerless mountain doesn't allow me to open up a cave?" 10,000 Blades Mountain was at the edge of the southern wasteland west of Mingsha. There was a third-grade metal attribute spirit vein there, and there were many different kinds of metal mines there. The 10,000 Blades Mountain was made up of many narrow mountain ranges that ran from north to south. Looking from above, it looked like countless blades were pointing towards the sky, hence the name 10,000 Blades Mountain. The two members of the Blood Demon Army naturally knew about the 1,000 Blades Mountain. This area was indeed the place with the densest spiritual energy in the entire Blood Demon Ridge. Without knowing the situation of Blood Demon City, there was nothing strange about opening up an immortal cave here. The two of them could tell that Wang Daoyuan's strength wasn't ordinary. With his cultivation at the middle stage of the Violet Palace realm, he was confident in facing two late-stage Violet Palace realm experts. His strength was definitely not bad, so he wanted to recruit him. The bearded cultivator smiled. "This is the core territory of our Blood Demon lineage. Blood Demon City is also nearby, so it's not an ownerless mountain. We are members of the Blood Demon Army and are responsible for protecting the Blood Demon City. It was not impossible for Dao Yu to live nearby. As long as one joined the Blood Demon Army, they would have a special cave residence and various resources. With Dao Yu's strength, it wouldn't be impossible for him to become a commander in the future." Wang Daoyuan naturally wasn't willing. He replied, "I've heard of Blood Demon City, but I don't know where it is. I didn't expect to run into it here. However, I don't like restrictions and won't join any power. Since this place isn't ownerless, I'll look for another place. Dao Yu, if you want to force me to stay, you can give it a try." The two believed that he was a new wandering cultivator, so there was no need for them to act. The bearded cultivator cupped his hands. "Since Dao Yu isn't willing to join us, we won't force you. In the future, if you want to, you can come here at any time." Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. "Since Dao Yu is willing to let me go, I still have to find a suitable cave residence elsewhere. I won't stay here any longer. Farewell." After speaking, he rode his bone sword and headed north. The two of them even cupped their hands. "We'll meet again." After Wang Daoyuan left, the bearded cultivator said, "Let's go down and block the hole that kid dug to prevent the spirit vein from being damaged." Seeing the two of them land, Wang Daoyuan knew that they were going to check the tunnel. A tunnel that was more than 500 kilometers long could not be hidden from the two of them. He immediately took out the wind-fire flying kite and drove it to head north. The two of them landed at the entrance of the cave and used their spiritual senses to probe inside, but they couldn't find the bottom. The bearded cultivator sensed carefully and asked, "Do you feel a baleful aura?" The bearded cultivator used his spiritual senses to probe and nodded. There is indeed a baleful aura. However, that kid is full of baleful aura himself. It's not strange for him to have a baleful aura here since he opened up a cave residence here, right? The bearded cultivator shook his head. "No, this baleful aura doesn't seem to be formed from killing too many people. It's more like the baleful aura of the earth vein. Furthermore, this tunnel is extremely deep and my spiritual senses can't reach the bottom. It's also very narrow. People would have to bend over to enter, so who would open up an immortal cave like that? There's baleful aura of the earth vein and an extremely deep hole. Not good. This person escaped from a place with baleful aura. He might be an expert who escaped from the heavenly baleful gold mine. Most of the people locked up there have extraordinary statuses. Quickly send a message to the Grand Commander and report this matter. If my judgment is correct and this person escapes, it'll be a huge mess. The bearded cultivator nodded and took out a communication jade talisman to send a message to the Grand Commander. Wang Daoyuan had just flown a few hundred kilometers, and Blood Demon City was more than 6,000 kilometers away from the southern border of Mingsha Plain. Even if he drove the wind-fire flying kite at full speed, it would still take him 2 hours to reach there. In order to avoid being too conspicuous, he lowered his flying altitude and flew close to the mountain. After 5 minutes, 3 late-stage Zifu realm cultivators suddenly appeared in front of him to block his path. They seemed to be from the Blood Demon Army. The 3 of them were about to ask questions when Wang Daoyuan took out the white tiger blade and used the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique to condense 10 sword shadows. The 3 of them hurriedly took out their magic treasures to defend themselves. One of the elderly cultivators shouted, "Daoyu, don't be afraid. We just want to ask you some questions. We don't have any ill intentions." Wang Daoyuan couldn't be bothered to listen to his nonsense. "You don't have any ill intentions. Now that you know what I did, you have ill intentions." Riding the wind-fire flying kite, he nimbly dodged the attacks of the 3. The distance between him and the 3 of them was only 3 kilometers. To a Zifu disciple, this bit of distance was nothing more than an inch away. Since the Grand Commander had ordered them to block him, they didn't dare to be careless. They defended with all their might, preparing to receive Wang Daoyuan's attack head-on. However, Wang Daoyuan used the wind-fire flying fire flying kite to fly a kilometer to the side. Using the flying fire flying kite at high speed and forcefully changing direction caused great pressure on the body. Even with the strength of Wang Daoyuan's body, he felt his blood and qi churn. The 3 of them who were planning to receive his attack head-on almost broke their waists. Braving the magical attacks of the 3, he charged forward. "We were prepared to receive the attack head-on, but you turned tail and ran." They immediately retracted their defensive magical techniques and chased after Wang Daoyuan. They casually used some offensive magical techniques, but they were all blocked by the 10 sword shadows. During this delay, Wang Daoyuan had already fled more than 10 kilometers. The 3 of them chased after him on their flying swords, but unfortunately, they weren't able to keep up with the wind-fire flying kite. At this moment, Wang Daoyuan turned his head to look behind him. Hundreds of kilometers away in the air, an enormous flying warship was chasing after him. This flying warship was extremely fast, definitely much faster than the wind-fire flying kite. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to fly out of Bloodfiend Ridge and would be caught. Because they were too far away, Wang Daoyuan wasn't able to determine the grade of this flying warship. He hadn't revealed anything, and Bloodfiend City wouldn't send out a 4th-rank flying warship to deal with him. The Violet Lightning Demon Punishing Writ should be enough. After advancing for more than 300 kilometers, 2 late-stage Zifu realm cultivators blocked his path. Several Zifu realm cultivators appeared on either side of him as well. This really was an ambush from all sides. Once he was surrounded, he would truly be unable to escape. Chapter 470. Wang Daoyuan didn't panic. Although there seemed to be many opponents, there weren't many who could be of much use. When he escaped, the Blood Demon City's side wasn't on guard. The cultivators blocking the road in front and the 2 flanks were all temporarily deployed to make up the numbers. These people were probably carrying out some other mission nearby and were ordered by their superiors to intercept him. There wouldn't be too many people blocking the road, and there wouldn't be any precise coordination. The best way to deal with them was to break through as quickly as possible and leave them behind. There was no need to care about the 2 flanking cultivators. They relied on flying swords and couldn't keep up with the wind-fire flying kite's speed. The biggest threat was still the flying warship behind him. The flying warship's speed was definitely more than 7,000 miles in 2 hours. It would be able to catch up to him in about an hour. In addition, there were cultivators blocking the road in front of him, delaying his time. The 2 cultivators blocking the road in front of him had to be dealt with as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he was entangled by them, the 2 flanking cultivators would surround him. Even if he used the Purple Lightning Evil Punishing Token, it would be difficult to escape. Injecting a large amount of spiritual power into the white tiger blade, he controlled the windfire flying kite and charged towards the two people blocking the road. He was already wearing the bloodfire purple gold armor. Two late Zifu realm cultivators wouldn't be able to heavily injure him in one blow. He only attacked and didn't defend. Holding the white tiger blade in his hand, he charged towards the two late Zifu realm cultivators with 10 sword shadows. These two people seemed to know about his feint earlier and didn't defend with all their strength. They only took out their defensive magic tools and used their offensive spells at the same time. Soon the distance between Wang Daoyuan and the two people was only a little more than a mile. The two people each shot out a fireball and a golden longsword. Wang Daoyuan controlled the windfire flying kite and used the flying fire escape to dodge the two attacks and instantly appeared in front of them. One of them held a silver shield and the other a fiery red longsword. The silver shield was a defensive magic tool. It was extremely strong and not easy to break through. It would be very difficult to kill him instantly. On the other hand, the one with the fiery red longsword should be a fire attribute cultivator. Fire attribute cultivators were good at offense and not defense. There was still a high chance of killing him. However, he still had to divide them. Wang Daoyuan controlled the 10 sword shadows to attack the shield-wielding cultivator. The shield-wielding cultivator hurriedly infused his spirit energy into the shield and drove the flying sword under his feet to dodge backwards. The sword-wielding cultivator swung his sword towards Wang Daoyuan, sending out a sword light, before holding his sword in front of him to protect himself. Now that he was isolated and helpless, Wang Daoyuan controlled the 10 sword shadows to circle around him and attack him from behind. The white tiger blade in his hand wasn't idle either. He swung his sword and slashed at his head. After the shield-wielding cultivator realized that he had been fooled, he immediately brought out a silver meteor ball and threw it at Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan did not take the two attacks seriously at all. He was wearing the bloodfire purple gold armor, so the two sudden attacks could only injure him slightly. Wang Daoyuan's white tiger blade slashed across his neck, and 10 sword shadows pierced through his back. The sword-wielding cultivator's head was separated from his body quickly falling down. The fiery red sword in his hand was also broken into two. The sword light he released slashed at Wang Daoyuan's body, but it only cut through his Taoist robe. There wasn't even a mark left on the blood-fire purple gold armor. On the other hand, the shield-wielding cultivator's meteor ball still had some power. The meteor ball smashed onto Wang Daoyuan's left shoulder. Wang Daoyuan's body was strong and he was protected by the soft armor, so his defense wasn't broken. However, the impact of the meteor ball still made him feel his qi and blood surging. The shield-wielding cultivator didn't dare to continue forward and retreated towards the south. Wang Daoyuan didn't dare to stay either. He didn't even collect the corpse and continued to drive the wind-fire flying kite towards the north. This time it only took a few breaths of time to deal with the cultivator blocking the way. Although he was slightly injured, it wasn't a big deal. After that, Wang Daoyuan didn't encounter any more cultivators blocking the way. Those demonic cultivators who were left behind by him all boarded the flying warship and continued to chase after him. After an hour, the flying warship was only 20 or so li away from Wang Daoyuan. The late-stage and peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators on the warship could already attack him with spells and magic tools. Naturally, the offensive magic tools on the flying warship could also hit him. Wang Daoyuan had no choice but to dodge in the air, and his speed was severely affected. If this continued, the flying warship would be able to block his path in just a few hundred breaths of time. At this time he was still 3,000 li away from the border of Mingsha Plain. If this continued, he wouldn't be able to escape to Mingsha Plain. With no other choice, Wang Daoyuan could only lower his altitude and travel between the mountains. He put on the spirit-restricting silk cloak and used the mountains as cover to play hide and seek with the enemy. The flying warship was huge and it wasn't easy to travel between the mountains. It definitely wouldn't dare to enter the mountains. The situation was as Wang Daoyuan expected. The flying warship continued to stay in the air and monitor the situation below. Under the command of the flying warship, the 10+ late-stage and peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators surrounded Wang Daoyuan. With the flying warship monitoring him, Wang Daoyuan found it very hard to hide. He was about to be surrounded by the 10+ Zifu realm demonic cultivators. At this time, a 3,000-meter-long greatsword appeared out of thin air and slashed down from the western sky. The demonic cultivators instantly trembled and hurriedly fled on their swords. Wang Daoyuan didn't feel anything. This great sword wasn't aimed at him. However, he still controlled the firestorm kite and dodged to the north. This great sword was aimed at the flying warship. At this time, the flying warship seemed to be fixed in place. Spiritual energy surged on the warship as though it was using all its strength to dodge, but it couldn't move at all. The people on the warship wanted to flee, but they were powerless as well. The 3,000-meter-long greatsword slowly descended. As though it was cutting through tofu, it cut through the flying warship from the bow to the stern without any hindrance. The great sword then disappeared and the flying warship was neatly divided into two halves. Afterwards, the two halves of the warship didn't fall to the ground. Instead, they turned into fragments that filled the sky. The people on the warship still had expressions of terror on their faces as they turned into minced meat as well. The demonic cultivators who weren't on the warship were all trembling like sieves. Wang Daoyuan sucked in a breath of cold air. This flying warship was at least of the 3rd grade, and there were 5 or 6 late-stage and peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators on it, as well as 10 or 20 Foundation establishment cultivators. Under this great sword they were all turned into minced meat. Could be said that this sword was truly frightening. Compared to this, his heaven-cleaving sword was like the fluorescence of rotten grass, but compared to the bright moon in the sky. At this time a cloud floated over from the west. A young man's voice rang out from within the cloud. "Junior apprentice Brother Wang, I wonder if your myriad arts can break this sword of mine?" Hearing this, Wang Daoyuan was startled. This sentence had a hidden meaning. That year at Wang Daoyuan's Sifu Grand Ceremony, after defeating the Kuei sword, he had said, "Myriad arts can break this sword." This person's words seemed to be directed at what he had said that year. In that case, this person should be someone from the Tai sword sect. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. "I wonder which senior from the Tai sword sect came to my rescue?" Laughter rang out from within the cloud. Junior apprentice Brother Wang is indeed perceptive. No wonder my master Taoist Black Thunder praised you so many times. He said that Dao Yu was a natural sword cultivator seedling, but unfortunately you came into contact with the Dao of sword cultivators too late. Zifu anomalies aren't swords. Walking the Dao of sword cultivators is always somewhat lacking. The cloud quickly floated over, and Wang Daoyuan saw clearly that there were 2 youths on the cloud. One of them was the familiar Kuei sword, while the other cultivator was a stranger. This person's appearance was ordinary, and he wore a plain white robe without any ornaments. His hair was tied up with a carefree cloth, and he didn't even wear the most common headdress for cultivators. There wasn't a trace of spiritual energy fluctuation on his body. He didn't look like a cultivator but more like a scholar of the secular world. A demonic cultivator who had narrowly escaped death cupped his hands. "This Jindan Senior, why did you attack us?" According to the agreement between my Blood Demon City, the Divine Weapon Pavilion, and the Tai Sword Sect, if a Jindan demonic cultivator doesn't appear, the Jindan cultivators of the 2 sects won't attack demonic cultivators. Senior, how do you explain your actions? Chapter 471. This Jindan sword cultivator looked at the demonic cultivators without saying a word. It wasn't that he had nothing to say, but rather that Zifu disciples weren't qualified to speak to him. Sword cultivators were powerful in battle, and they looked down on ordinary cultivators of the righteous sections. Demonic cultivators were even less worthy of their attention. Putting on airs in front of demonic cultivators and heretical cultivators was something that all sword cultivators had in common. Even the more approachable cultivators would be affected if they joined a sword cultivation sect. However, someone had to reply. Kuei sword continued. "My senior apprentice brother was discussing the Tao of the sword with junior apprentice brother Wang. That sword strike just now was for junior apprentice brother Wang to see. I'd like to ask, why are you chasing junior apprentice brother Wang?" The Zifu disciple had an indignant look on his face. "This person is a fugitive from our Blood Fiend City. How did he become a member of the Tai sword sect?" Kuei sword said disdainfully, "Dao, think carefully before you speak. This junior apprentice brother Wang is the disciple of Adept Thunderflame of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. You say he's a demonic cultivator? My senior apprentice brother killed you in order to save you. Your Blood Fiend City has dealt with Adept Thunderflame before and you know his temper. If junior apprentice Brother Wang were to fall at your hands today, even if a few Jindan cultivators of Blood Fiend City were to die, his fury would most likely not be quelled. Even if things were to end here, if Adept Thunderflame were to learn of this, it would be hard for him to avoid making trouble for you. Adept Thunderflame's power was at the peak of the half-step Yuanying realm. He was also a lightning attribute body refiner, and his lightning techniques countered demonic cultivators. Even half-step Yuanying demonic cultivators weren't a match for him. The demonic cultivators didn't doubt Kuei Sword's words. With a Jindan cultivator present, killing them would only be a matter of a single sword strike. There was no need to lie to them. The demonic cultivator clasped his hands. Thank you, Senior, for your life-saving grace. The cultivator who injured Dao Yu has already died by Senior's sword. Dao Yu Wang, what happened before was all a misunderstanding. You were near that tunnel and we thought you were a fugitive from Blood Fiend City. We accidentally injured Dao Yu. Please forgive us, Dao Yu. This is a small token of appreciation from our Blood Demon City. Dao Yu, please kindly accept it. With that, he took out a storage pouch and handed it to Wang Daoyuan. Wang Daoyuan took the storage pouch and opened it. Inside was a fist-sized piece of high-grade grade 3 Tai-E gold essence. Although he didn't care about these things now, there was no point in continuing to cause a ruckus. He also didn't want his master to risk his life against the Blood Demon City's Golden Core cultivators for him, so he chose to keep the peace. When the fiendish cultivator saw him accept the Grand Unity Essence Gold, a smile appeared on his face. This was what he used to refine his natal Dharma artifact. At this moment he had no choice but to take it out to settle this matter. Although he felt some heartache, if this matter could be resolved without bringing too much trouble to Blood Demon City, the higher-ups would definitely compensate him. He cupped his hands towards the Golden Core Sword cultivator and said, Senior, if there is nothing else, we will take our leave. The Golden Core Sword cultivator did not say anything and only nodded. The crowd of fiendish cultivators felt as if they had been pardoned and left with gratitude. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands towards the Golden Core Sword cultivator and said, Senior, thank you for your help. Otherwise, I'm afraid it would have been very difficult for me to leave alive today. The Golden Core Sword cultivator waved his hand and said, No need to be so polite. Taoist Lei Yen and my master Taoist Xian Lei address each other as equals. You and I are also of the same generation. With junior brother's talent, forming a golden core is only a matter of 100 years. My name is Swordless. You can just call me Senior Brother Swordless. Hearing Swordless words, Wang Daoyuan was stunned. The person in front of him was the famous Swordless Taoist, a legendary figure among sword cultivators. He was the only Golden Core cultivator in Beiyuan Zhou Xian to have the title of Taoist. At present, in Beiyuan Zhou Xian, the highest cultivation level was only half-step Yuanying. Golden Core cultivators were already the top fighting force, and the title of Taoist was not as strict as before. Even so, the title of Taoist was not something that just anyone could get. There were no sects that specifically gave Golden Core cultivators a title. The titles of Taoist and loose cultivators were either given by themselves or called by others. The next step was to see if they could be recognized. Once he had a title, the other cultivators would call him that. That would mean that he was recognized by everyone. If other cultivators did not take the title seriously, then it was not recognized and the title was naturally invalid. Some experts might have multiple titles and in the end it would depend on which title was called more loudly. At present, Golden Core late stage and above cultivators all had the title of Taoist. Among Golden Core middle stage cultivators, very few had the title of Taoist. For example, the Netherworld sect master was also at Golden Core middle stage, but he did not have a title. Any cultivator with a title was recognized as having the strength of a Golden Core late stage. This swordless Taoist was only at Golden Core early stage, and it had only been 100 years since he formed his Golden Core. The title of Swordless Taoist was recognized by even the 4 top powers. His name was Swordless and he indeed did not have a sword. Sword cultivators had to nurture their life-bound flying swords, and when he had just entered the Violet Palace realm, he had indeed sacrificially refined his life-bound magic tool. However, not long after he had sacrificially refined it, he had become one with the sword. After that he felt that his life-bound flying sword's growth was too slow, and he had directly abandoned it. Although he did not have a sword, he could casually use sword cultivator spells. The sword strike that had shattered the flying warship had been executed with his bare hands. Swordless Taoist was publicly recognized as the #1 sword cultivator genius in Beiyuan Zhou Xian. Wang Daoyuan asked with a face full of surprise, "You are Swordless Taoist?" Swordless Taoist replied with a question, "I'm only at Golden Core early stage. How can someone impersonate me? Junior Martial Brother once said that 10,000 techniques can break a sword strike. I wonder if Junior Martial Brother can break my sword strike with 10,000 techniques?" Wang Daoyuan was not discouraged and replied, "I simply cannot understand Senior Martial Brother's sword strike, and I have no idea how to break it. However, when I reach Golden Core early stage, I may not necessarily be unable to defeat Senior Martial Brother's sword strike." Swordless Taoist laughed. Master's words are indeed correct. Junior Martial Brother is good sword cultivation material. However, in my opinion, Daoyu may not necessarily be unable to shine brightly on the path of sword cultivation. Although the Violet Palace anomaly is important, it is not indispensable. I have not even used my life-bound flying sword, nor have I used my Violet Palace resonance. I am still a sword cultivator. Wang Daoyuan nodded. Sword cultivation, body cultivation, and magic cultivation, in my opinion, they are all just one path of cultivation. As long as one has the Tao in one's heart, it makes no difference which path one walks. Swordless Taoist nodded. Cultivators of my generation cultivate the Tao. If one has the Tao in one's heart, so what if one is a sword cultivator or not? I only understood this after forming my Golden Core. Junior Martial Brother, you are only at the middle stage of the Violet Palace realm, yet you were able to comprehend it. Your talent is indeed extraordinary. Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. Senior Martial Brother, you flatter me. I wonder how Senior Martial Brother came to this place by chance. Kuei Sword interrupted. You should thank me for this. Last time you saved me. You let me know that in the southern wasteland I can no longer be as straightforward as before. I was at the 10,000 Blades Mountain, learning how to pretend to be a devil cultivator. After learning it, I have been lurking in the outskirts of the Blood Demon Ridge. Today I happened to be traveling nearby and saw that the Blood Demon army was making a big move, so I went closer to watch. I recognized your flying magic artifact and sent a message to the sect asking for help. Senior Martial Brother Swordless happened to be patrolling the southern wasteland and came nearby, so I asked him to come help. Right, the Blood Demon army did not see through your true identity at all, and thought that you were a devil cultivator. Then why are they chasing after you? Wang Daoyuan laughed. I have been in the Blood Demon City for more than 10 years and caused some trouble in the city and was targeted by the Blood Demon army. When I was escaping, I was discovered by the Blood Demon army members, which caused them to chase after me. As soon as these words were said, even Swordless Taoist had a surprised look on his face, while Kuei Sword's face fell. I thought that being able to hide from ordinary devil cultivators was already not easy. I did not expect that Junior Martial Brother Wang could actually sneak into the Blood Demon City and not reveal your identity while being chased by a group of devil cultivators. It seems that my ability to conceal my identity is still far from Junior Martial Brothers. Chapter 472. Wang Daoyuan smiled. Senior Brother Kuei, you don't have to be like this. Sword cultivators are mostly straightforward and not good at disguising. What sword cultivators need to care about is the way of the sword, not small tricks like disguising. Hearing this, Kuei Sword's mood improved a lot. He smiled. Junior Brother Wang really knows how to talk. If it was Master or Senior Brother Swordless, they might have reprimanded me for a long time. However, we're brothers and sisters. The difficulty of saving you this time is much higher than last time. I asked Senior Brother for help, so the favor of saving me is cancelled out. You still owe Senior Brother Swordless a favor. Wang Daoyuan sighed in his heart. Although Master Xuanlei's strength was not as good as his master's, his ability to teach disciples was really good. To be able to teach a sword genius like Master Swordless and teach a rash person like Kuei Sword to be so good at settling accounts. He looked at Kuei Sword helplessly and smiled. I say, you're a proper sword cultivator. Why are you always thinking about settling accounts? Master Swordless smiled. Junior Brother Kuei Sword is indeed different from before. However, you're better now. I'm patrolling the southern wasteland and have to report back to the sect. Junior brother Wang, do you have time to visit Tai Sword Sect? Wang Daoyuan cupped his hands. I might have to disappoint senior brother Swordless. I still have matters to attend to in Mingsha Plains. When I'm free I'll visit Tai Sword Sect. Master Swordless waved his hand. No matter, there'll be plenty of opportunities in the future. Kuei Sword hurriedly said, Senior brother, you should go back first. I'll train in the southern wasteland for a while. Swordless Sage glanced at him and said, In your dreams. Before I came out, Master had instructed me to bring you back while I was at it. You've been traveling for more than 20 years and you don't know how to go back and see Master. Master Swordless took the dejected Kuei Sword and headed towards the northwest. Wang Daoyuan also rode the wind-fire flying kite and headed towards the north. His identity had been exposed, so he had to leave as soon as possible. Although the Blood Demon army did not dare to attack him again, the loose cultivators among the demonic cultivators were not afraid of anything. Being entangled by a group of loose cultivators was also a big problem. After leaving the Blood Demon Ridge and returning to Mingsha Plains, Wang Daoyuan did not go anywhere else. After sending a message to his master Lei Yanzhenren that he was safe, he went to Huangjiagu Mountain. Previously he had already dug a hole here. Now he could go in and try to condense the earth attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. In the space of the spiritual pearl, the wood attribute pseudo-spiritual fire was already very stable, and the flame was also half an inch tall. The origin of spiritual fire was also slightly bigger than a sesame seed. When the spiritual fire's origin grew to the size of a mung bean, it would be a true spiritual fire. After all, the origin of the life spirit flame was only the size of a soybean. However, it would probably take a lot of time to grow to that point. Back then, when perfected Lord Hundred Spirits cultivated the pseudo-spiritual fire into a spiritual fire, he was at the late stage of the Golden Core realm and had the help of the Red-Winged Crow. Even so, it still took 200 years. Although the peach tree sapling was miraculous, judging from the fluctuations of spiritual energy, it was only a third-rank upper grade. Since he had to nurture the life spiritual fire and the pseudo-spiritual fire at the same time, his speed would definitely be slower than true Monarch 100 Spirits. To nurture a true spiritual fire, it was not impossible to spend 400 to 500 years. However, with the time acceleration of the spirit orb's space, even if it took 1,000 years, it would not be a big deal. After Chiyu ate the eggshell, its growth speed increased greatly, and it was now the size of a pigeon. The feathers on its body were as black as ink with faint fiery red patterns. The feathers on its wings were pure gold. However, it had yet to condense a natal true fire or grow a natal tail feather. Seemed like it was still too young. With a flap of its wings, it brought with it a fire attribute spiritual energy. It should not take much time to condense its own natal true fire if it stayed beside the Scarlet Sun true fire all day. When it condensed a natal true fire in the future, he could ask it for help when he condensed the fire attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. The speed might be faster. It had been more than 2 years since he obtained the metal attribute spiritual fire. The space of the spirit orb had increased by another 10%, which was 1/10 of an acre. The newly added land was at the edge of the space of the spirit orb. It was only a small addition and was not worth sowing. Whatever was planted at the side he would make up for it. Wang Daoyuan entered the cave in the small valley of Huangjiagu Mountain and sealed the entrance. He stopped more than 40,000 feet from the ground in the cave and drew out a wisp of dust-returning flame from the space of the spirit orb and placed it on the stone wall. After that, he controlled the spiritual fire to burn the surrounding stone walls. What he needed to control was to leave stone pillars behind when the dust-returning flame burned the stone walls to prevent the rock layer above from collapsing. In every acre he left 5 stone pillars with a diameter of 3 feet. The strength of the rocks here was extremely high. There was no problem for the stone pillars to support the rocks above. He did not need to care about the rest. Burning the stone walls was the dust-returning flame's specialty. Only the sesame-sized fire seed became more stable. Wang Daoyuan did not put the pseudo-spiritual fire into the space of the spirit pearl. Instead he placed it on the rock wall. He was not worried about the flames burning everywhere. The flames on the pseudo-spiritual fire were very stable as long as they were not separated from the fire seed. Whether it was the spiritual fire or the pseudo-spiritual fire, as long as the fire seed was there, it would not burn everywhere. If the outer flames absorbed spiritual energy and grew a little stronger, The essence would be drawn away by the fire seed. A rootless fire that was separated from the fire seed would be extinguished at the slightest breeze and would not cause too much trouble. This was also the restriction of the world's laws on spiritual fire. Otherwise, the entire cultivation world would be burned down if the spiritual fire burned everywhere. Chapter 473. After condensing the pseudo-spiritual fire of the returning dust flame, Wang Daoyuan did not take the risk to dig up lava and continued to condense the fire attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. There were less than 20 years left in the 30-year agreement with Flying Sand Wanderer. Even if he condensed the pseudo-spiritual fire, he would not be able to refine the spiritual fire and increase his strength. In the remaining 20 years, it would be better to increase his cultivation. When the true devil blood lotus matured, all kinds of demonic cultivators would come to fight for it, and even ferocious beasts would be attracted. If he wanted to help Flying Sand Wanderer obtain the true devil blood lotus, he would definitely be besieged by all kinds of forces. In this kind of situation, even staying alive would be very difficult. If he wanted to pass this hurdle, he would have to increase his strength as much as possible. His cultivation had been in the middle stage of the Zifu realm for more than 10 years, and there were still 20 years left. He would find time to refine some purple rhythm pills, and use the returning dust flame to ignite rocks to obtain pure earth attribute spiritual energy. He had 5 spiritual power seeds, and his cultivation speed was comparable to that of a double spiritual root cultivator with an 8-inch main spiritual root. With all the resources he could get, breaking through to the late stage of the Zifu realm in 20 years was not a big problem. Before that, he needed to change the metal attribute spiritual power seed. The original metal attribute spiritual power seed was also metal attribute spiritual power. Wang Daoyuan directly turned it into metal attribute spiritual power, and then poured it into the white tiger blade. This spiritual power contained killing intent, which could be used to nurture the white tiger blade. After that, he extracted the spiritual fire essence from the Tai golden flame and condensed the metal attribute spiritual power seed. 3 days later, the metal attribute spiritual power seed was formed. After being refined by the spiritual power seed, the metal attribute spiritual power contained the killing intent of the Tai golden flame. When using ordinary metal attribute spells, the power increased by 30%, and the ability to break through defenses increased even more. Metal-type spells were much more powerful when used against defensive spells and defensive artifacts. The 5 elemental spiritual power seeds did not need to be changed anymore, and only needed to be nurtured. However, before fusing with the spiritual fire, it was best to make the 5 spiritual power seeds the same size. He refined all the mature purple rhythm dragon ginseng into purple rhythm pills. After that, he went into seclusion in the underground cave of the Huangjiagu mountain. The Huangjiagu mountain was not far from the Divine Weapon Pavilion's Treasure Cauldron mountain, only about 10,000 miles. Wang Daoyuan was in constant contact with Wang Daoyin to understand the situation of his family. On the other hand, everything was normal in the family. Occasionally there would be rank 3 monster beasts that would invade the family business, but with the 12th uncle there was no loss. The situation in the Zhao kingdom remained the same. The Song kingdom in the south was restless, so the Thousand Spirits sect was unable to do anything. The small skirmishes between the Cruel Sun Palace and the Wei nation had never stopped. The Ghost sect was held back by the affairs of Shanbei. The conflict between the half-demon tribes and the bloodthirsty ash wolves became more and more intense after Wang Daoyuan stirred things up. Zhou Wan also carried out Wang Daoyuan's strategy, fanning the flames whenever she had nothing to do. Both sides often had minor conflicts and casualties occurred from time to time. The relationship between the half-demons and the demons was tense in the entire northern mountains. The Ghost sect wanted to meddle in the affairs of Shanbei at this time. They wanted to seize the opportunity to seize some territory and gain a firm foothold in Shanbei. The 3 major sects each had their own plans, so there were no more conflicts. Wang Daoyuan did not dare to return to the family at this time. Otherwise, he would be assigned a mission by the Ghost sect and it would be difficult for him to come out again. He might even delay the matter of the true demonic blood lotus. It was not worth delaying the refining of his natal magic weapon for the Ghost sect. 15 years later, Wang Daoyuan sat cross-legged in a cave thousands of feet under the Huang Jagged Mountain. At this time his body was emitting intense spiritual power fluctuations, and a dazzling purple light flashed between his eyebrows, illuminating the entire underground cave. 15 minutes later, the purple light suddenly burst out like a purple sun, making people not dare to look at it directly. The spiritual power fluctuations on Wang Daoyuan's body had also increased significantly. After breaking through the middle stage of the Purple Mansion realm, he had successfully broken through to the late stage of the Purple Mansion realm. This cultivation speed was not inferior to the heaven's spiritual root. The underground cave was now thousands of acres in size. As for the rocks, they were all burned by Wang Daoyuan with the dust-returning flame. He obtained a large amount of pure fire attribute spiritual power. In addition to using it for cultivation, the rest was used to nurture the pseudo-spiritual fire. In these years, the earth attribute pseudo-spiritual fire had also improved a lot. The fire seed was already half the size of a grain of wheat. Of course, the growth speed could not be compared with the wood attribute pseudo-spiritual fire. With the peach tree sapling continuously providing wood attribute spiritual power, the fire seed of the wood attribute pseudo-spiritual fire was already very close to the size of a mung bean. In a few years, it would almost become a real spiritual fire. The 5 spiritual veins in the spiritual pearl space had long broken through to the 3rd rank. Now they were all middle-grade rank 3 spiritual veins. The area of the spiritual field had also increased by 1 acre. Now the spiritual pearl space had 41 acres of spiritual field. The most gratifying change was the red-feathered crow. This guy's wingspan was now more than 3 feet. It was already an adult red-feathered crow, and its cultivation had also reached the 3rd rank lower grade. When a demonic beast reached the 3rd rank, its body would generally not be too big, because the strength of a 3rd rank demonic beast mainly depended on its innate spells. Except for those demonic beasts whose innate spells relied on the physical body, the expansion of the physical body did not increase the strength much. On the contrary, because the body was too big, it was not good for hiding and also reduced flexibility. Therefore, most 3rd rank demonic beasts were more used to shrinking their bodies. Now, the red-feathered crow had already condensed its natal true fire, which was no different from the scarlet sun true fire. Unfortunately, its natal feather had not yet grown out. Wang Daoyuan had been in seclusion underground and did not let him go out to fight. The spiritual pearl space was extremely narrow and it could not be used at all. Therefore, Wang Daoyuan did not know what other innate spells it had besides playing with fire. In the past 10 years, there were no problems with the family. 5th great-uncle and 12th uncle had both broken through to the middle stage of the Purple Mansion realm, and the 3 major sects were still peaceful. After breaking through, Wang Daoyuan did not plan to go out. Instead, he continued to stay in the cave and nurture the 2 natal magic artifacts. His cultivation had just broken through to the late stage of the Purple Mansion realm. If he continued to cultivate, it would not be possible for his cultivation to improve significantly in a short period of time. To improve his strength, he could only work on the white tiger blade and the black tortoise shield. The black tortoise shield had almost no offensive power. As a defensive magic artifact, there was no need to specially comprehend the black tortoise's charm, but at least it had to be refined to the point where it was telepathic. When fighting for the true demonic blood lotus, there would be more than 1 or 2 opponents. It was very likely that he would have to face a large group of demonic cultivators and ferocious beasts. At that time, a battle of attrition would be unavoidable. It was inevitable that his divine sense would be overdrawn, and the recovery of his divine sense would be relatively slow. He had to ensure that after his divine sense was overdrawn, he still had strong offensive and defensive abilities to buy time for his divine sense to recover. It was very important to refine the black tortoise shield to the point where it was telepathic. Of course, he could not neglect the white tiger blade. Before, he did not think that sword cultivators were very strong. After all, he could easily defeat most sword cultivators of the same level. After seeing the swordless spiritual master's sword, he knew the strength of sword cultivators. All these years he had been thinking about that sword. At that time he did not understand, but now he had a rough idea. The swordless spiritual master had used his sword intent and the comprehension of becoming one with the sword to slash out that sword. However, he could not see what the swordless spiritual master's sword intent was. After all, that sword was not aimed at him, so he could not feel its power. With about 4 years left, it was impossible for him to reach the state of becoming one with the sword, but he could improve on his sword intent. Also, he had a lot of Heaven Ferocious Gold and Grand Unity Essence Gold. He could extract their essence and smelt it into the White Tiger Blade. The current White Tiger Blade was still a middle-grade Tier 3 magic artifact. Just relying on spiritual power to nourish it, it was indeed possible to make the life-bound magic artifact advance, but it would take too much time. Using the method of smelting higher-tiered phase would save a lot of time. After the White Tiger Blade advanced, the power of the Sword Cultivator's magic arts would also increase by a level. 3.5 years later, Wang Daoyuan was nurturing the White Tiger Blade. He received a message from Flying Sand Wanderer, asking to meet him in the small valley of the Yellow Jagged Mountain to discuss the matter of the true demonic blood lotus. Chapter 474. There was still half a year left before the 30-year agreement. The Flying Sand Vagabond only had a rough estimate of when the true demonic blood lotus would bloom, so it was reasonable for him to go half a year earlier. Wang Daoyuan did not waste these 3.5 years. He used 2 years to refine the Black Tortoise Shield until it was connected with his mind. After that, he spent half a year to refine the White Tiger Blade with the 3rd level upper grade Sky Demon Gold and Extreme Unity Gold, upgrading the White Tiger Blade to a 3rd level upper grade magic weapon. The last year was used to comprehend the White Tiger Sword intent. However, the White Tiger Sword intent was focused on killing, so it was hard to make any progress in seclusion. The White Tiger Sword intent did not make much progress, but the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique had a great breakthrough. Now, each Sword Shadow's lethality was equivalent to 1/5 of the White Tiger Blade's full power attack. When fighting, the 10 Sword Shadows plus the White Tiger Blade's main body would have 3 times the lethality. Wang Daoyuan tested the power of the White Tiger Blade. A casual sword ray was 5 times more powerful than a 3rd level upper grade 5 elements divine sword technique talisman. If he used the myriad sword technique and condensed the sword shadows, the power would increase by 10 times. The full power attack of the flying sword was 50 times more powerful than the 5 elements divine sword technique. Adding the full power attack of the 10 sword shadows, it was equivalent to 155 elements divine sword techniques attacking the same place at the same time. Moreover, this was only the direct lethality. If the opponent had an extremely strong defensive magic weapon or spell, the 5 elements divine sword technique would have a hard time breaking through the defense. However, the White Tiger Blade's ability to break through defenses was extremely strong. Adding the killing intent of the metal element's spiritual power, its lethality to opponents with strong defenses was something that ordinary spells could not compare with. If he used the White Tiger Blade to fight, he would also need to add his physical strength. These attacks did not need to accumulate spiritual power and could be used in an instant. Wang Daoyuan's current physical strength was comparable to the spells of ordinary middle-stage Zifu realm cultivators. With his current strength, he would not be weaker than most peak-stage Zifu realm cultivators if he only used the White Tiger Blade and his physical strength. Although it was a pity that he could not continue to comprehend the White Tiger Sword intent, his strength was enough. In the depths of the southern wasteland, as long as he did not encounter golden core stage cultivators or talisman treasures, he could do anything he wanted. After replying to Flying Sand Wanderer, he would wait for him in the small valley of the Huang Jagged Mountain. Wang Daoyuan packed up and left the underground cave, reaching the top of the tunnel. There were still several hundred feet of rock layers above him, so there was no need to break through them. He could just use earth escape. After waiting for more than 2 hours, Loose Cultivator Flying Sand arrived. The moment he saw Wang Daoyuan's cultivation breakthrough, he said in astonishment, "Daoyu's cultivation speed is truly astonishing. That year when we fought, he was only at the middle Zifu stage. Now he's already at the late Zifu stage. Seems that Daoyu was not boasting back then. Forming a gold core is really not worth mentioning to you. How strong is Daoyu now? Can you reveal a bit? Our cooperation this time is extremely dangerous. It'll be easier for us to cooperate if we know the basics." Wang Daoyuan didn't go into detail. He just smiled and said, "If Daoyu's strength hadn't improved by leaps and bounds in the past 30 years, I wouldn't have needed to use the 5 elements Devil Suppression Seal to take down Daoyu." Loose Cultivator Flying Sand nodded satisfactorily. Wang Daoyuan's strength had exceeded his expectations. When they fought in the past, Wang Daoyuan could rely on the 5 elements Devil Suppression Seal to fight him 40 to 60%. Although this strength was strong, it couldn't be sustained. With one strike, there was indeed a chance to kill a peak Zifu disciple. After this strike he wouldn't have the strength to fight anymore. This trip was extremely dangerous. It wasn't enough to only rely on his ultimate move to fight a peak Sifu disciple. Now without using his ultimate move he could defeat a peak Sifu disciple. If he used his ultimate move again he might be able to kill a peak Sifu disciple. He asked again, "May I ask if Dao Yu is ready? When can you depart?" Wang Daoyuan replied, "I can depart at any time. I just don't know where this true devil blood lotus is. Is it the Blood Devil Ridge or the Devil Burial Mountain?" Loose Cultivator Flying Sand was startled. It seems that Dao Yu hasn't been idle these past 30 years. The true devil blood lotus grows in the middle of the Devil Burial Mountain. Back then I traveled there for a period of time. I was chased by devil cultivators, so I hid in an underground cave. By chance I discovered this true devil blood lotus. Later I searched through many ancient books and determined its approximate maturity. However, does Dao Yu have a method to disguise himself as a devil cultivator? If we go to the Devil Burial Mountain like this, I'm afraid we'll be besieged by devil cultivators on the way. Wang Daoyuan clenched his right fist and punched out. The fist wind hit the stone wall and left a half-inch deep fist mark. Soon after he took out a bone sword and asked, "Dao, do I look like a devil cultivator or a righteous cultivator?" Loose Cultivator Flying Sand sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Dao Yu has such a powerful body. Without using spiritual energy, you already have such powerful strength. Coupled with this bone sword, ordinary devil cultivators really can't see through you." After saying this, Loose Cultivator Flying Sand took out a blood-red pill and swallowed it. A moment later his qi and blood fluctuations rapidly increased, and he looked about the same as ordinary devil cultivators. Soon after he took out a white bone wheel and said, "I've already dealt with the matters at home. We can set off now." Wang Daoyuan wore the blood fire purple gold armor and the forbidden spirit silk cloak. He rode the bone sword and followed Loose Cultivator Flying Sand to the southeast. Directly south was the Blood Demon Ridge. There were many devil cultivators. If they directly went through the ridge they might encounter a lot of trouble, so it was better to take a detour. Although it would take a detour of tens of thousands of miles, it was not a big deal for the two of them. After entering the devil cultivator's territory, they might encounter danger at any time, so they couldn't be in a hurry. Once they consumed too much spiritual energy they might encounter a surprise attack and die. After traveling for more than 10,000 miles, they would find a safe place to recover their spiritual energy. They didn't encounter any trouble along the way. After 2 days, they bypassed the Blood Demon Ridge and arrived at the northernmost part of the Devil Burial Mountain. The Devil Burial Mountain ran from north to south, with a maximum length of more than 20,000 miles and a width of more than 3,000 miles from east to west. There was a giant 4th-rank low-grade water spirit vein in the mountain. Legend has it that when the ancient devil race invaded, many devil corpses were thrown here. After a long time they turned into a mountain range. Just by looking at the name, one would think that it was a barren place where demons and devils ran rampant. But after arriving here, they realized that the Devil Burial Mountain did not live up to its name. Not only was it not a barren place, but it was also a place with beautiful scenery. Because of the water spirit vein there were many rivers and lakes. Every mountain peak was also lush with vegetation. Everywhere was a scene of exuberant vitality. In a place like this, there were naturally many ferocious beasts. Devil cultivators relied on plundering to cultivate, especially those of the blood demon lineage. They had a great need for the blood of ferocious beasts. Therefore the Devil Burial Mountain had become a hunting ground for the blood demon lineage. The mountain was tall, but it couldn't be compared to the Blood Demon Ridge. Wang Daoyuan and the Flying Sand Wanderer came for the true demonic blood lotus, so they weren't interested in the ferocious beasts. The two of them went straight for the center of the Devil Burial Mountain. On the way they encountered devil cultivators hunting ferocious beasts and did their best to avoid them. Although they didn't want to look for trouble, trouble came knocking on their door. After entering 4,000 li into the Blood Demon Mountain, there were 3 Violet Palace Realm devil cultivators in front of them. They were currently surrounding a black tiger-type ferocious beast. Among the 3 devil cultivators, 2 were at the peak of the Violet Palace Realm, and 1 was at the late stage. This ferocious beast was also a high-grade 3rd-rank ferocious beast. Its strength was extraordinary. Under the joint attack of the 3, it was still able to continuously counterattack. One of the 3 devil cultivators took out a ring with a bell attached. It looked a bit like a dog's collar. When the black tiger saw the collar, it stopped fighting with the 3 devil cultivators. It turned around and ran towards Wang Daoyuan and the flying sand wanderer. The cultivator holding the collar shouted to the 2, "You 2 stop this vile beast. After this I'll give you something." The 2 of them didn't put a high-grade 3rd-rank ferocious beast in their eyes. They also didn't want to get involved in this matter, so they went east to hide. The black tiger's speed wasn't slow. In a few dozen breaths of time, it escaped into the mountain forest. The 3 devil cultivators didn't dare to chase after it. Instead they blocked Wang Daoyuan and the flying sand wanderer. The cultivator holding the collar said with bad intentions, "I told you to stop the black tiger. Are your ears stuffed with donkey hair?" The cooked duck flew away. "If you 2 don't compensate us for our losses, don't even think about leaving." Chapter 475. The demonic cultivators of the blood demon lineage used the blood essence of fierce beasts to cultivate all year round, so it was hard to avoid being attacked by baleful aura and resentment. Therefore most of the demonic cultivators were disagreeable people. The 3 people in front of him were the type commonly seen among the demonic cultivators. If they were slightly displeased, they would vent their anger on others. Wang Daoyuan did not tolerate their bad habits. "Daring to cause trouble in front of me, unless you're stronger than me, you'll die." He asked Flying Sand Wanderer, "Is it convenient for you to make a move?" Flying Sand Wanderer did not say anything, only shaking his head. It seemed that his pill was still not strong enough. If he were to make a move, he would easily be exposed. Wang Daoyuan laughed, "Then leave these 3 idiots to me." Saying so, he pointed at the 3 people and said, "Who wants to die first?" The Peak Zifu realm cultivator holding the collar said to a young cultivator, "We really met someone who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. This kid seems to have just entered the late stage of the Zifu realm. 3rd brother, your cultivation is the same as his, you deal with him." The young cultivator laughed disdainfully, flying his sword to attack Wang Daoyuan. This guy was also a hothead and did not have a defensive magic tool. He used a defensive technique and flew over on his sword. When the 2 people were less than 3 li apart, Wang Daoyuan's hands flickered with silver light. Then 2 huge silvery arm phantoms appeared beside the young cultivator, grabbing him. The young cultivator had just entered the late stage of the Zifu realm, and his strength was not that great. He struggled with all his might but found that he was powerless to resist. This was a body cultivation technique that was widely spread, called Mountain Splitter, a low-grade 4th-rank technique. Tu Yuming knew this technique, so did his clone. Wang Daoyuan was about to slap him to death, but Flying Sand Wanderer hurriedly stopped him. "Leave him alive, maybe he'll come in handy." Thinking about it, the true devil blood lotus was very likely related to blood. Maybe sacrificing his blood essence would have some effect. The 2 Peak Zifu realm cultivators also went up to rescue him. Wang Daoyuan used one of his arm phantoms to choke his neck, and the other phantoms to slap him unconscious, dragging him to his side. Flying Sand Wanderer took out the yellow sand gourd, taking the young cultivator inside. The cultivator with the collar said angrily, "Release my 3rd brother immediately, or I'll make you wish you were dead." Wang Daoyuan was too lazy to bother with him and took out the white tiger blade. The cultivator holding the necklace shook the necklace in his hand, and the bell on it let out an ear-piercing sound. It seemed to have the effect of attacking the soul. Moreover, the sound wave attack was directional, so the cultivators around him were not affected at all. However, Zifu disciples were protected by their Zifu mansions, and their souls were transformed into divine souls. This sort of attack was capable of instantly annihilating a large number of Foundation establishment cultivators, but it was far from effective against Zifu disciples. Only Zifu disciples would feel a bit uncomfortable and their divine sense would be affected. Next, the bell released 2 short swords formed from divine sense, respectively attacking Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand Wanderer. This short sword was only 3 inches long and was formed by the power of divine sense. It could not be seen with the naked eye and could only be probed with the power of divine sense. With the interference of the sound wave attack of the bell, the divine sense of an ordinary Zifu realm cultivator would be completely suppressed and be unable to investigate at all. This magic tool could also be considered a kind of magic tool for sound cultivators. It used the sound wave attack to interfere with the divine sense, and used the divine sense to attack and kill the enemy. Unfortunately, Wang Daoyuan's divine sense was extremely strong, surpassing that of ordinary peak Zifu realm cultivators. Needless to say, Flying Sand Wanderer had been running rampant in Mingsha Plain for hundreds of years and had seen all kinds of tricks. This little trick was not enough to take him down. Wang Daoyuan used the myriad sword art and repeatedly waved the white tiger blade, slashing out one long sword afterimage after another. The divine sense dagger that had been aimed at him completely disappeared after cutting off the 3 long sword phantoms. Flying Sand Wanderer also took out the thick earth devil suppressing seal and released a large seal afterimage to break the divine sense short sword. Of the long sword afterimages that Wang Daoyuan brandished, 2 more slashed towards the cultivator holding the necklace. The cultivator next to him took out a huge earthen yellow shield. After activating it, an even bigger shield afterimage appeared on the shield. When the 2 long sword afterimages hit the shield afterimages, they immediately dissipated. The shield afterimages became a lot dimmer, but the shield itself was not damaged at all. These 2 people's cooperation was very tight. One used a sound cultivator's magic tool to attack, while the other used a shield to defend. Ordinary peak Zifu realm cultivators really had no way to deal with them. That devil cultivator activated the bell again, while Wang Daoyuan took out the soul extinguishing bell. The soul extinguishing bell was a high-grade second-tier magic tool. It was almost useless against Zifu realm cultivators, but its defensive ability against sound wave attacks was still pretty good. Under the activation of his divine sense, Wang Daoyuan's body was wrapped in a thick layer of golden light. The effect was pretty good, and the power of the sound wave attack was weakened by more than half. He used the Sword Shadow Divine Light technique, and 10 sword afterimages with a murderous aura revolved around him. Soon after, a black fog that covered an area of 20 kilometers appeared out of nowhere, enveloping the 4 people. The Demon Burial Mountain had a 4th-tier water-type spirit vein, and the water-type spirit chi was extremely dense. Using the cloud mist escape here, the range of the cloud and fog was far greater than usual. Moreover, this cloud and fog carried water-type spirit energy that could attack the divine sense. Zifu realm cultivators had their Zifu to protect their divine sense, so attacking the divine sense was somewhat difficult. However, eroding the power of the divine sense and restricting the detection of divine sense was still very easy. The other 3 immediately cast defensive spells, isolating the black fog outside. He leaped into the air and attacked the 2 devil cultivators. The 2 devil cultivators were less than 5 kilometers away from him, and they arrived in an instant. The cultivator holding the collar activated the bell again and shot out a divine sense dagger. The cultivator holding the shield immediately blocked in front, preparing to take Wang Daoyuan's attack head-on. Wang Daoyuan condensed the soul-severing blade and resisted. The divine sense dagger and the soul-severing blade were equal in power and both disappeared. Wang Daoyuan also arrived beside the 2 and used all his strength to slash at the shield. The 10 sword afterimages and the white tiger blade slashed at the same time, and an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing rang out. The black fog dissipated, and the 2 devil cultivators' faces were filled with fear. Soon after, the shield phantom shattered. Immediately after, the shield broke into 2 halves, and the 2 devil cultivators were cut in half at the waist. They didn't even have time to make a sound before the sword chi invaded their bodies, and their internal organs were all shattered. The 2 people and their shields fell to the ground, leaving behind a large blood stain. Wang Daoyuan was currently gasping for breath. This attack used up almost half of his spirit energy, and a lot of his physical strength was also consumed. Flying Sand Cultivator was frightened by this attack, killing 2 peak Zifu realm cultivators with a single slash. Even if it was unexpected, the difficulty was still very high. Wang Daoyuan pointed at the cultivator holding the collar and asked, "The power of my slash isn't enough to kill 2 peak Zifu realm blood devil cultivators. This person's body is weak, and when the white tiger blade cut through his body, I didn't feel much resistance, so he doesn't seem to be a blood devil cultivator. Dao Yu is experienced and knowledgeable. Take a look at his methods." Flying Sand Cultivator walked forward and used his divine sense to check the corpse. Suddenly, a small purplish-black person flew out from the corpse and drilled into Flying Sand Cultivator's forehead. The situation was urgent, and Flying Sand Cultivator didn't have time to use any spells, so he directly used the thick earth devil suppressing seal in his hand, and the small purplish-black person was instantly turned into ashes. The thick earth devil suppressing seal had an extremely strong restraining effect on devil cultivators, and a mere devil cultivator's soul couldn't resist it at all. Flying Sand Cultivator broke out in cold sweat and said, "I almost failed miserably. This person can still use his divine sense to attack after his body died, so he should be a Yin Devil type devil cultivator." The devil race is divided into 3 categories: Yin Devil, Yang Devil, and Law Devil. Yin Devil's body is weak, but their divine sense is extremely strong. Yang Devil cultivates the body, Yin Devil cultivates the soul, and Law Devil cultivates magic, very similar to us humans who cultivate essence, chi, and spirit. Of course, there are also those who cultivate all 3. The most commonly seen Blood Devil lineage belongs to the Yang Devil lineage. Looking at this Sound Cultivator's magic tool, it should be the illusory Sound Devil lineage of the Yin Devil lineage. However, this person's inheritance shouldn't be much, and the power of his magic tool should be just so. If we encounter a high-level illusory Sound Devil cultivator, even if we can win, our injuries won't be light. When I discovered the true Devil Blood Lotus that year, I was chased by an illusory Sound Devil cultivator. Chapter 476. Although Wang Daoyuan had 2 devil cultivator clones, they were both blood devils. Cui Ming had fled to the Blood Devil Ridge from the border of the southern wasteland, so he didn't know much about devil cultivators. Zheng Ping had lived in the Blood Devil City since he was young, so he rarely went out. He used to be a member of the Blood Devil Army, so he had access to many ancient books. He knew that there were many factions of devil cultivators, but he had never seen any devil cultivators other than blood devils. His clone didn't know much about the illusory Sound Devil, so he really didn't know anything about it. It was just that this illusory Sound Devil cultivator was too weak. However, the 2 of them together were enough to deal with most peak Zifu realm cultivators. They could only blame their bad luck for encountering Wang Daoyuan, who could break through the defense of the shield-wielding cultivator and wasn't afraid of divine sense attacks. Wang Daoyuan put away his white tiger blade and soul-extinguishing bell, and picked up the storage pouches of the 2 brothers. He hid them under his soul-restricting silk robe, and then put them into the space of the spirit pearl. Flying Sand didn't do much, and he had already taken third brother's wealth, so he naturally didn't have any objections. Inside the space of the spirit pearl, Zheng Ping's clone checked the inheritance of the 2 devil cultivators. The inheritance of the shield-wielding cultivator was an ordinary devil body refining technique. On the other hand, the illusory Sound Devil cultivator's wealth was quite good. Apart from spirit stones and some miscellaneous items, there was also a beast-skinned book and a jade slip. The beast-skinned book recorded the illusory Sound Devil cultivator's cultivation technique, called the illusory Sound Soul Seizing technique. It mainly relied on sound waves to attack the opponent's soul, and then refine the opponent's soul to increase one's divine sense cultivation. All devil cultivation techniques were based on the devil race's cultivation techniques, but they had been modified to be more suitable for human cultivators. For example, Wang Daoyuan's doppelganger soul nurturing technique was very similar to the Yin Devil lineage's cultivation technique. The 5-spirit immortal transformation technique was also a bit similar to the Yang Devil lineage's cultivation technique. According to the records left behind by the 5-element spiritual master, he had borrowed all kinds of high-level cultivation techniques, including the Yang Devil lineage's cultivation technique. Actually, this wasn't strange, as it wasn't rare for righteous Dao's cultivation techniques to borrow devil cultivation techniques. This was especially true for the cultivation methods of the divine sense. Most of them were more or less related to the cultivation methods of the Yin demons. Demonic cultivation methods were originally based on demonic cultivation methods, with some human cultivation methods incorporated into them. Between the 2, it could be said that you have me in you and I have you in me. The Yin demon clan's cultivation methods had a deep understanding of the soul. In the future, if Wang Daoyuan wanted to repair the doppelganger soul nurturing technique, he would have to use the Yinma cultivation method as a reference. This illusory soul-seizing technique was a great reference for the doppelganger soul nurturing technique. There was no distinction between good and evil in cultivation techniques, except for cultivation techniques that devoured souls. This was because the value of a human soul was higher than that of any other demonic beasts. Even the value of an ordinary human soul was higher than that of a second-rank demonic beast, and was comparable to that of a third-rank demonic beast. Unfortunately, there were a large number of mortals in the human race who couldn't cultivate. Evil cultivators who cultivated soul-devouring techniques could easily kill a large number of mortals to increase their cultivation. If the soul-devouring cultivation method became popular, the human race would be in danger of being exterminated. Therefore, all the righteous cultivators had a common understanding. They could tolerate demonic cultivators who refined their bodies, and even those who refined corpses and raised ghosts. Only cultivators who cultivated by devouring souls would be killed if they saw one. In addition to cultivation techniques, there were also some spells that used sound waves to attack. Wang Daoyuan naturally wouldn't cultivate the sound cultivation method, but he couldn't be ignorant about it. After all, sound wave attacks were good for sneak attacks and he had to be on guard. That bell-shaped collar was also not bad. This thing was called the demonic soul-suppressing bell, a third-rank high-grade magic tool, and its power was only SS of. There was also a jade slip that recorded the refining method of the demonic soul-suppressing bell. After dealing with the 3 demonic cultivators, Wang Daoyuan and Flying Sand continued to advance towards the center of the Demon Burial Mountain. Soon they arrived at the center of the Demon Burial Mountain, near a lake with a radius of more than 500 miles. The place where the true demonic blood lotus grew was underground near this lake. This lake was surrounded by lush vegetation and there were many streams. Naturally, there were also many fierce beasts and spiritual plants. There were many crocodile-type fierce beasts in the lake, which was why it was called the Turtle Dragon Lake. The crocodile-type fierce beasts were generally not small in size, and they had a lot of blood essence, which attracted a large number of demonic cultivators. According to the information obtained by Flying Sand Wanderer, a few days before the true demonic blood lotus bloomed, a strange fragrance would spread out, and no method would be able to seal it. However, this fragrance had a strong attraction to fierce beasts, and it was almost impossible to sneak down and take advantage of it. At this time there was no flower fragrance and there were no traces of battle in the surroundings, indicating that the true demonic blood lotus had not bloomed yet. Flying Sand Wanderer was familiar with the place and brought Wang Daoyuan to a secluded place. He pointed at a piece of flat land and said, "Go down 300 meters from here, and you will find the passage leading to the true demonic blood lotus. The true demonic blood lotus is after all a heaven and earth treasure. And once it blooms, it can't be hidden from people. When the time comes, those demonic cultivators and fierce beasts in the Turtle Dragon Lake will certainly come and get involved. With just the 2 of us, wanting to seize the true demonic blood lotus and retreat safely is harder than ascending to the heavens. It's better to go down and make preparations in advance to have a higher chance of success." After saying that, Flying Sand Wanderer used the Earth Attribute Escape technique and escaped underground. Wang Daoyuan also followed closely behind using the Earth Escape technique. 300 meters underground, there was indeed a karst cave and an underground river. Wang Daoyuan followed Flying Sand Wanderer's footsteps, and quickly advanced in the karst cave. After a quarter of an hour, the 2 of them walked roughly 100 miles, and arrived in front of a spacious stone room. Using his divine sense, he discovered that this large stone room was divided into 4 small rooms, and each small room had a river channel which was connected to the outside of the stone room. The more Wang Daoyuan looked, the stranger he felt. This stone room was very much like a heart. The 4 small rooms just happened to be 2 atria and ventricles, and the river channels connected to the 4 small rooms from the outside were the 4 large blood vessels that connected to the heart. The only difference from the heart was that the 4 small rooms were directly connected, and the true demonic blood lotus was precisely at the intersection of the 4 small rooms. The moment he entered the stone room, Wang Daoyuan smelled a pungent smell of blood. The spiritual energy in this place was unusual, and it was not as violent as outside and instead seemed very gentle. It was just that when his body came in contact with this spiritual energy, he had a creepy feeling. He immediately activated the spirit isolating jade pendant, and isolated the spiritual energy outside. This time he did not have that creepy feeling. At the intersection of the 4 small rooms was a pool of about 30 meters in diameter, and the pool water was blood red. In the center of the pool water, there were 5 blood red lotus leaves, and in the center of the 5 lotus leaves was a snow-white flower bud. The stem of the flower bud seemed to be condensed from blood, and it flickered with a demonic red light. However, the flower bud that grew on it did not have a trace of blood, and it was even emitting a holy light. This could really be considered as growing out of the mud without being stained. The surrounding environment was so strange and evil, yet such a holy flower bud grew. Flying Sand Wanderer looked at the flower bud and nodded with satisfaction. The true demonic blood lotus is about to bloom, and it seems that it still needs about a month's time. We really came at the right time and we still have time to set it up. I heard that Dao Yu is proficient in alchemy, artifact and talisman arrays, all 4 paths. This matter of setting up the array will be left to Dao Yu. Wang Daoyuan observed the surroundings and said with a nod, "It's indeed a good place to set up an array. When the true demonic blood lotus blooms, it will surely attract a large number of opponents. At that time, whatever trapping array or killing array will not be of much use. It's better to set up an illusory array around this pool. The fiendish cultivators here are mainly blood devils, and this group of people's divine sense cultivation is not considered profound. Adding on many years of cultivating with fierce beast blood essence, they more or less have a little devil. Not to mention fierce beasts, their intelligence is about the same as ordinary wild beasts. Using an illusory array to deal with them is perfect. After we snatch the true demonic blood lotus, we can escape along the path we came from, and we can also set up several array formations to block the pursuers along the way. However, I'll say the ugly words first. Snatching something from the hands of a group of fiendish cultivators and fierce beasts, no matter how well prepared we are, it's also a job with our heads hanging on our waistbands. It's really hard to say whether Dao Yu can escape alive or not. You can't let me take this risk for nothing, right? Give me what I need. Otherwise, if you die, who am I going to find for it? You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.